Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I love this weather. This secret summer stuff is so
Sam
great.
asked Patrick what the status of the
Oh my
grant
gosh.
application was.
So blessed.
And Patrick says we sent it in 2.5 weeks ago.
I think he's so blessed.
We haven't heard back yet.
No?
And so
Yeah.
Sam pulls out his phone and sends the head of the Coastal Conservancy a text. What's hanging up our project?
Oh my God.
Sunday Sam called. Which staff members handle that at the conservancy? So I told him. He says, well, the chair wants to know so he can call him Monday morning and get this
This is
thing
another
going.
photo thing. These are just extra. You don't need these.
Who you know?
You've got your one from last week. Okay, so you need that, and then the one we worked on today. That's
With
right.
the two
Yeah, I'll take it.
that were Monday night at the high school on the SB 910, the old SB 910.
Yeah. Let me go print some.
I got a lesson on how to obfuscate the text.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
question?
Show you like overhead view.
One of the questions was,
That's right.
what do you do about cities that are built out? They're where?
It is.
Built
Oh
out.
my God.
Both of them gave no
Yeah,
answer.
I love it. We've got the mountains.
The other one was, another one was
We've got cities. We've got.
treating everybody the same
Really,
way.
we have a nice airport here too,
Everybody's
so that's
saying
nice.
the same.
It's good. But I don't really have
They
I don't
talked
have the
around
urge
it
to leave.
and talked around it. They're experts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What I got.
Not answering, yeah, it was amazing to watch.
Then Addis shocked me, but I'm narrow. We were talking about the effects,
How you do that.
the rule and all those things.
They'll do
And
what
she
you
said,
do. Even if they
want
don't like
to
it,
know,
they'll
or
learn
should know,
what to
that there are
do.
cities and communities that like the
Yeah,
idea.
I know. Well,
When
even
you
so,
talk
my
about
sister's
development,
youngest,
you're-
she's
you're
got
just not gonna pull
one in
through.
graduate school and one that's 7.
They support it.
And, my
Well,
youngest,
you know, our
because the
neighborhood
older
voices
siblings were taking care of
indicated
him a
there were
lot.
over
He's just
60%
addicted
that
to
would
technology,
support
because whenever
our
he
neighborhood
made-
voices. That leaves
Not
40% that are
different
for it,
ways to
you
Yeah.
know.
phone or job.
In our own city,
Yeah, that's right. You think of places like Merced and so forth, they're all hot to
Yeah.
develop.
that's gonna be workforce, and that's gonna be booming today, because they got less.
Yeah,
The other thing is, what did you hear when one of the questions said about transfer some of our credit to Florida? All I heard was there's plenty of water out there.
That's what I heard, yeah.
I didn't hear, well, I'll see if we can do that.
Yeah, no, it was unsatisfactory. It was not satisfying. When I left, I just
Introduced to me by our 80-year-old.
left, you know, I didn't feel
That
like,
same feeling.
yeah, that we had made any dent or anything in their thinking.
Paul tried a couple of times
Great guy.
to clarify and get,
He was
they weren't.
No, they were
They're going
certainly
around
politicians
and teaching how to use
in the worst sense of the word.
Well,
they put technology in.
we gotta keep working.
So he would start to talk about
On the
music.
list of the
Well, I don't think I can say anything
Yeah.
more about that.
At the minimum. Neil's coming, but he's gonna be late. He was called, say he's in Monterey on his
They're
way.
living, they're just living the life and then it's just letting them
I feel for that guy, he's trying to make a living and
Yeah,
all this stuff is going on.
I know, it's hard.
Oh, yeah? Oh, right.
I brought a costume.
You wondered.
For that? No. Oh, that. Little objection there.
A little objection. Okay, she said, oh, put it on me, thank you. But you gotta get her ears through there. Yeah, you gotta get your ears free.
Mom, what are you doing, Mom? Oh, she's cute. Oh, it's like a little beret.
This won't last long, I'm sure. off. Okay, we'll take it off.
So you know where we're at and what we're doing.
Notice and agenda.
Is there anyone here on Zoom?
Not yet.
Okay. So maybe we don't have to be as worried. Oh, but does it get recorded? Maybe we still have to
Yes,
worry?
we still
Okay.
use it.
All right. Let's bring it to order. We don't have one of our committee members because sadly for him, he's in Rome. Yeah. I know, poor thing.
Doing the hard work.
That's right. Getting architecturally educated, I'm sure. Okay, and I also wanted to, so we're 4 out of 5, that's the roll call, and it's a quorum, so we can proceed. I did want to, even though this is public comments next, I did want to offer up, because we live in a Garden of Eden, a snack from the tree in my yard, which is doing very well. So if you don't want one during the meeting, at least take it with you. It's come on in if you're interested. But I also wanted to ask the committee if it would be okay to at least discuss future agenda items prior to getting into the meat of it. Is that okay with the committee? We don't have to do it right this second, but I just want to make sure we do it. And since we tend to get into it, I'm afraid we will be disbanding before we do that. So
It is.
I think it is on. Hello. Does it help you if I speak closer? Okay. So let's go to public comments first on non-agenda. Anything non-agenda related, not to the steering committee business, David? And I have to pass you this, I'm afraid. Maybe move in closer.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, David O'Neill. I'm just curious if we're going to have some time in the next few meetings to go over some more changes to the design guidelines that some of us have come up with.
Thanks, David. And another hand up.
At the next council meeting on Tuesday, there's going to be a presentation by Marnie on notable homes, which is an interesting proposal about how to save some of our older homes from demolition by using incentives for people who purchase those homes. So I hope you all can attend and listen and comment and whatever. Thank you.
Mayor White, were you reaching for the mic for a public comment, or you? I'm not forcing you to, but.
About the mic?
Do you need to, do you have any
You have non-agenda?
Yeah, I do. The riches of this city, the population, the budget, the amount of money we spend compared to other cities around the county, for sure, we're number one spent per registered owner. And here we are in the City Hall, and we have one microphone, and we've got to pass it around hand to hand. Now, Brandon's getting his exercise, getting up and down and reaching and all this stuff, but that's really bad. So Brandon has told me to speak up at a city council meeting during public spectacle time, and that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, we want microphones. That's what we're saying, and I agree. Okay, and to David's point about whether we can discuss other things.
So we're going to come back. I can speak to that if you want, because we're going to come back.
Well, I thought maybe we do under future agenda, which we've now moved to the front. So let me just move to announcements from this group, the steering committee group, that are not on today's agenda. Any thoughts, announcements? No? My one announcement is just a thank you again for everybody for sticking with this, for doing all the stuff you do when you're not here, researching, thinking about it, walking around, bringing your thoughts to the table. A thank you to any volunteers, a thank you to the volunteers on the steering committee, and a thank you to the staff for putting this on top of everything else they do. So that's what we need to do to, preserve our community. Okay, so now we're on to discussion items, but we're going to foreground the future agenda items, which brings me back to David's point and anything you want to say about that, Brandon. But I thought, of course, that could be something we could agendize maybe in a couple weeks, just a check-in for whenever our next meeting is.
Sure. It's a good question. What we've talked about a few times in here is that we're working on getting the components we need to put together another draft. So we're working on right now the photographs. We talked about, we went through all the guidelines. We worked on the meat. We worked on the meat of the sandwich. We worked on all of the sort of like the bread and the lettuce and the tomatoes of the sandwich when we went through the narrative stuff. So the next step is actually, after we're done with the photograph exercises, to come back with a draft. And I think that would be the appropriate time for everyone to see it in another draft, to start talking about changes rather than working on parts of the sandwich that aren't even put back together yet. I'm sticking with that analogy. So from a project schedule and management perspective, that's where I see that fitting into, is when we come back with the draft for everyone to look at again in whole.
So I'm going to ask the committee also just about future agenda items again, so we don't get it caught at the end of the meeting when we don't have time. My thought was, since we are moving to holiday time and harvest time, and we already have trouble getting everybody here, and I mean, maybe summer travel's coming to an end, but then we have holiday travel coming up, that maybe we should at least put something on the books to meet, even if it's for a short meeting, to just talk about the schedule, talk about what's next. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour meeting, but maybe something in the next couple weeks to keep this rolling, so we at least save that on our calendars. Is there any other thought about future agenda items or what I just said?
Well, I'm kind of concerned that I don't know that we're ready to wrap up this quickly. I mean, I think there's still stuff hanging out there. There's, perennially the whole landscape issue and how that's going to interface. And then there are the items for the appendix. There are future comments or changes that we might want to make before we give it to Brandon to do the final. Because then it's just going to be, more difficult once it comes back from the council. If they don't have pretty much of a final document, I don't think it bodes well for us. And it, as you said aptly, it's going to get into holiday time and so on and so forth. So I think that in the next 2 weeks, we definitely need to have another meeting for us to feel like we've really put something together and we don't have a lot of loose strings hanging. I mean, that's how I feel. Sure. Mary.
Are you looking for responses to her comments or new agenda items?
Or general items, announcements from
Okay.
the steering committee, but also anything you want to say
Okay.
about the meeting in the next.
One item I would like on the next agenda is the landscape ordinance. And I'd like the agenda structured so that we may have the option to send correspondence to the city council. It's been almost a year since we sent that to the council. They considered it in December and accepted the idea, and we've seen nothing. Second, I would like the public guidelines, public property guidelines, the municipal guidelines on the next agenda. We will have a draft ready for consideration at some point before we end our existence.
Any thoughts about future agendas? Your flashlight is on, just battery-wise. Okay, so future agenda items, that's a list from the group. My concern is more maybe just about making sure we get something on the calendar as we head into the holidays as soon as possible. And so what do you think, Brandon, about 2 weeks for maybe a short meeting? Yeah?
Let's pull up calendars and see.
Okay. So today is the 26th. Anybody have any major trips to Rome or anything planned? Okay. Darn, exactly. We should all go at the end of this.
Well, perhaps we should, if we're gonna, maybe we should think about what we want the meeting to be about, rather than just putting a meeting. That might inform how much time we need before, if we have to pull something together. So what does the committee wish to meet about at the next meeting?
Well, it sounds to me, just to recap what I've heard so far, that though I understand from today's agenda where we do have some communications on the agenda, that from prior discussion offline, those are now, this is a little bit current business, but that we're going to continue those items. So should they be prepared or be interested in going out, they might reappear on that agenda, I guess. The other idea, yeah.
Technically, you guys have to.
Actually, I know.
Because it's on the agenda, so you guys have to do something about it.
Well, we can, I guess that's,
I move that items B and C be continued
There you
to
go.
our next.
That's what I was looking for. Thanks, Doug.
okay. Any second to move, continuing the 2 letters, items B and C, to some future agenda?
Is that
No
fine
second?
too?
Yes, that's yours?
Yeah,
Okay, there's a second. All in favor? Aye.
aye.
Okay. So majority moves to do that. So that could be on a future agenda. I don't know that that's definitive. Then it sounds like just checking in on kind of loose ends is another item for folks. And an update on the landscape ordinance progress. And what else? And
Doug had mentioned the municipal guidelines.
yeah, I mean, we can discuss later, and I guess this is maybe something we could try to resolve right now, whether that should be some kind of full-fledged examination of it, which is going to be more involved, or just a check-in, but full throttle. Okay, so that could be a future agenda item. And I think it sounded to me like it was more just elements of the sandwich, see how they're coming, get a report from you, maybe get a timeline from you. I see that that's on here on the schedule for A, but maybe another check-in. So maybe we should, yeah.
I think we should continue for further discussion after Brandon's report on 4A, that item too, because I don't think we're going to wrap that up today.
And I guess one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this at the beginning of the meeting is just to look at our calendars and get a date. If it turns out after our meeting and we've gone through this agenda, there's some other thoughts people want to have, we can split this item, the future agenda item, we can come back to it later in the meeting. So how about let's get out our calendar, let's finish that task. So small to medium-sized meeting, maybe.
Well, can I make some comments
Yes,
on
go
that?
ahead.
So small to medium-sized meeting, I don't know if that comports with Doug's request to do a full throttle deep dive investigation on a municipal code, right, Doug? I mean, that's municipal guidelines, thank you, is what I meant to say. It's not a small to medium meeting, I'm guessing.
We'll be ready to discuss.
Yeah, okay. And for what it's worth, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I don't think we should be working on those right now. I think that we should continue working on the actual design guidelines that, the 2 parts. But, the committee can continue to work on what they like. But I'm going to continue to express my concern that that's not our task right now. But we'll agendize it if that's what the committee wishes.
Well, and again, agendizing it is different than calendaring a meeting. So coming up with the agenda, we can finalize later. We can finalize at the end of the meeting, et cetera. But I just want to at least get something before the holidays. But go ahead, Doug.
So if the chair would indulge me for a moment. Many of us remember the 1980 presidential election, when Jimmy Carter was challenged by Ronald Reagan. And the issue that year was the economy. The inflation rate was at double digits, high double digits. The federal government was running a huge deficit. In September of that year, Reagan had a cabinet meeting. He won the election. And George Shultz presented a program for cutting $74 billion from the federal government. At the end of Shultz's presentation, the president asked the cabinet, if not us, who? If not now, when? 20 years ago this past June, the City Council adopted the general plan. And in that general plan is policy 1-100, which reads, implement guidelines for civic design to preserve unique community characters and resources, public structures, street signs, landscape features, and materials. So I would ask the committee, if not us, who? If not now, when? It's been 20 years.
Okay, that's good. Wow, okay, so we've got like the majority applauding from the public. Yes, no, I mean, I know that Doug has discovered, he told me this, that discovered the foundational legal principle that requires us to do this. And it does, in that way, make sense if the steering committee is convened that we do this. The level to which it's done, I don't know how we fit that into the schedule. I do think, I mean, you know that I have always, everybody in the room, I believe, has supported this notion. The question of how, including the staff, yeah, maybe it's the when, but if not now, when. So again, I think what we should do is, our main issue is not meeting. We cannot get anything done if we don't meet. So let's meet and tackle what we can from now till whatever we think the deadline is. So maybe now we're talking about, at least having enough time to do something substantive, but let's look at our calendars and see what we've got between now and 2 weeks from now. Are you trying to reach for the mic? Yeah. Okay, here you go.
I think that we pretty much all must feel that we've come a long, long way, and we've accomplished one heck of a lot. But we're not done. We're not near done. And we're not going to be done by November. And we may not be done by December because we've got all of the holidays to deal with. So I think, as Doug has mentioned, this is the time to get this done and done right. We tried it 20 years ago, and those of us who were on that committee spent an inordinate amount of time and energy to do the first design guidelines. They were good. They were very good for that time. And they're still good for today. But, like all good things, with time there can be improvement. And I think we've come a long ways with this, like I said before. And I think all of you will agree with that. But we are nowhere near finished. And if we don't do it right, if we don't finalize it, if we don't feel like we've completed the task, just because somebody somewhere decides that it needs to be done by November because they didn't like the idea in the first place of reviewing it with the community, I think we just ignore it. That's one person, and if the powers that be want to say it's got to be done by this date, then we just say, well, that's fine, but recognize that you will have not completed a proper project, and the city is going to suffer the consequences, and so will you ultimately. Because I don't think that those people who are aware of what we're doing will stand for it. And there's a great deal of community support behind this. And many times community projects don't have a lot of community support, but we do. Because I think the community understands and believes that we're trying to do the right thing, that we have involved the community, and because we have wanted to involve the community. And that's extremely important in Carmel-by-the-Sea. Few communities have the level of interest and dedication. And maybe it's because we're small, maybe it's because we're special. I tend to think both. But anyway, I just would urge us to stand very firm and finish this project with the help of staff, of course, and just pursue this till we feel that we've really completed our task and done the very best job we can for the city and the city council. So that's my spiel for the day.
We're in a very lofty mood today, which is nice. I like it. But I still want to get it on the calendar. So tell me, Brandon, what you've got for the next couple weeks.
I mean, everyone's calendar is important.
I know, but
Very busy. So, Monday and Tuesday. So how many hours? So what? I'm still kind of.
maybe like a standard 2-hour meeting. Just start there.
Do next Friday afternoon, Friday the 3rd.
Friday the 3rd. That you want to? Do you have a way to check your situation, Melanie?
If we do it in the afternoon, it's probably okay.
Yeah, I think we're just planning on doing afternoons from here on out because I know it's better for you.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How does it look for you, Marianne? Friday the 3rd. Okay, and what about Don? Does Don, anyone know when he's coming back? He'll be back? Okay.
The length of the meeting be held till the end of this meeting, so we find out about item 4A, in addition to what's already been discussed.
But right now, we're going to be corralling for the 3rd, it sounds like. If that works for you, Brandon, yeah? Okay. All right. Well, I feel better just knowing that we will probably be meeting, which is the only thing that really moves this along, is to get the work done. Okay. So thank you for that. Let's now take whatever thoughts we have about the future agenda and reserve them for the final 5 minutes. And we'll move on to the actual exercise at hand, which is going to be the similar exercise, if not the same exercise that we did for the commercial thing, with the caveat that we're going to start with the momentum that we had from the last thing, I think, and not have to, and with Marianne's brilliant guidance to kind of clump by subheading our discussions about the photographs so that we actually can, otherwise it's just not possible, I think, to get through it. So if we remember what our habits were from the last meeting about commercial, even though it was a couple weeks back,
Yeah, let me, if that's
and then now I'm going to hand it over to you. Go for it.
Yeah, so, and Catherine Wallace was kind enough to redo the matrix. So if you have the matrix from last time around, grab one off the table over there. We've reformatted it just visually to make it a little bit easier for how we're doing this. You can see there's the blue headers. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, the commercial. Residential, that's correct, yeah. That's all we're doing today is residential. You'll see the blue headers as we go down the pages. Those are the starts of each of these clumps that we did last time. So, the 1.1s go all the way down. Then we see a new blue header. That's the start of a new one. So this will help us focus where we're at in each little clump. We also did reprint over there on the table. Last time around, we had the one version prior on the brevity draft. Many people were working off the current one, but we had printed for the public. So that if you need an updated version of the brevity draft design guidelines, those are over there. And that's what we are going to work through, and it should correlate to the spreadsheet. So if you remember, what we're doing basically is just looking at the section. So the 1 point, yeah, Marianne.
Was it May 23rd, and this is May 26th? Are these different?
It's the same, but this is the one that went to council. So it just had a different logo on top. Yeah, yep. It was 3 days later. It was when we went to council. So
It might be not different at all.
I think it's not different at all. Yeah, it just had a different title on top.
Okay.
So if you look, what we're going to do is like go through the 1.10s. Looking back at what we did last time, we were looking at things about looking for keywords within the different guidelines. If there's things that we want to try to capture a picture of a keyword, things we want to highlight, and we're just going to go section by section. So I guess we start with the header, which is sort of in the yellow color, the preserve, restore, and enhance the forest. Do we feel like this first picture here looks like it's somewhat representative of that? Do we feel that's a good picture? Does it need a picture? Replace? That's sort of the exercise at hand here. Are we missing a picture? Do we need a new picture? And just kind of open it up to the committee.
I think the upper canopy trees are really characteristic of the town, and there may be a better image that has both the oaks and the upper canopy in one picture.
I totally agree with that. Emphasis on the upper canopy.
So we need both.
Yeah, but we
Okay.
need to emphasize the upper canopy. Because visualize this community with only oaks or lower canopy trees and no upper canopy trees, this would not be Carmel.
So look for a better picture that is upper and lower canopy with an emphasis on the upper canopy. Okay, so that's that first line there. So now that gets us down through the 1.10 through 1.17, which takes up 2 pages here, but you can buzz through them and see if there's keywords. It looks like we have a sketch here that goes with 1.14. And we have a picture at the bottom of a no, like do not do, which seems to go with 1.15. So do we think that's a good this picture at the bottom, do we think that's a good picture of what not to do? Locating new construction to minimize impacts on established trees?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an A. I love these sketches in general, and this one is no exception.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with certainly the tree diagram.
When it comes to the graphic representation, and almost every single project lately has a straight driveway like that. So I'm not quite sure what's up with that. I mean, if it doesn't get enforced and everybody basically in town is doing that, then the question is, why do we even have that?
You're saying the straight driveway and not avoiding the trees is being executed around town, even though it's prohibited here, or it's discouraged?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
discouraged, yeah.
So what's discouraged is to mow down a tree so you can have a driveway. You're saying trees are just getting taken out so people can have a straight driveway?
You see that it's,
Well, it sounds to me like we need to keep it in because of that and not take it out. I mean, not
But
give
we
up.
need to stress it,
Yeah.
stress it.
So do we need more then for this to illustrate this point so that it really is driven home?
I'm just pointing out, and sketches like that are kind of useless if there's no enforcement of that.
Well, it could be, we discovered this in our last discussion, everybody, that sometimes the discussion about the photograph led us to thoughts about the text. And again, I don't want to, God knows I don't want to be here for another full year massaging the text, but to Marianne's point, if we are talking about the building site, open space on the building site and avoiding trees, and we don't mention things like pavement and hardscape, this applies to that too. Maybe that
Absolutely.
is something missing in the
Text.
text. Do you see what I'm saying? Do people agree with that? I'm seeing nods from my committee. Okay.
We have language in here about
So where is
pavement and hardscape, though. Trying to remember.
And moving keeping the trees, do not remove trees to provide parking the right of way.
112 sort of says it, doesn't it? And 113.
I mean, the language of 112 basically gives people who want to take out trees along a lever, because it says, you need to determine which trees are significant and should be protected. So
Mhm.
if a tree is not determined significant, then you've got a straight driveway, right?
And also, what might be significant for one person is not significant for another. In other words, you know, we sitting around this table might even have some differences, but the point is I think the community has one idea, and some people interpreting the ordinances or not looking at the ordinances would do something different, and so that is always a problem. So it needs to really be spelled out.
So here, look at 1.1.5, just below, where it says, locate new construction to minimize impacts on established trees. It doesn't even say significant trees. It speaks to working with the landscape you have. Now, again, maybe the word construction could be expanded, you know, including buildings and all hardscape,
Yeah.
pavement, that kind
Yeah.
of thing, and that might help the
That's a good
planning
idea.
commission enforce that more. So, so let me just note that.
Just say including hardscape.
Yes, okay.
I think that's good.
So there's
good
a,
definition.
this is in 1.1.5 where it says locate new construction. So we just make it a little more descriptive, including all hardscape or whatever else we want to say, walls. Because at least here it's not even talking about particular species or significant trees. It's just basically saying, please work with the landscape as you found it to the best extent you can.
Is
So-
there a definition somewhere what a significant tree is?
I'll have to look. I believe that there is. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll look into that.
That would be great.
Yeah. Because that kind of falls under the Forest and Beach Commission and the forester, so it's not something that lives in my brain
That's
all the time.
exactly
Yeah.
our point, that
Right.
why we need to look at these things in a more integrated manner, right?
Okay, I'm writing that note to check on that definition. So, yeah, so to Brandon's question though, everybody look through all these to the extent you can, because this is only showing a few illustrations, only really 2 for this subsection. Any other?
I think we should add, we had someplace, I firmly remember we had some examples someplace, and we probably should include in
sorry.
this section, since it's the, basically the introduction to what we're doing, that if we had at least 2 pictures, really good pictures of what we're talking about, it would make a huge difference.
Which,
People, Brandon, who come here from wherever, wouldn't understand, I think, all the sensitivity that we're putting into this. It just doesn't have the background. So they come to do a project, and they read and look at this from a totally different perspective. So I think that we've got to educate them as much as possible, as to what we want.
Well, can I ask you this, Melanie? So so for example, on 1.1.6, I don't think we've ever had a photo there. This is about protecting the vegetation. I just saw a marvelous on Carpenter Street. I don't know if anyone else remembers this. All the trees are currently webbed for new construction on a corner
Oh, yeah.
site,
Mhm.
close to ocean, but not at that corner. Totally covered with orange netting right now. If we could go out and snap that. I mean, if it's worth basically just having that illustration to emphasize for folks, we really mean protect it because we really want to keep everything as much as we can. So like that could be an added thing. We've never had that illustration in the guidelines. I know it's really regulatory, but maybe as a visual cue, this is what we mean. We really mean protect things. Is that a thought? I don't know.
so I was going to ask alongside with that, if I could, sorry, just because to get back to Melanie's point. Melanie, were there a few, what I heard you saying was we need to look at, sending the overall message of what this section means. Were there a few keywords or concepts you think specifically that would warrant a picture that kind of stood out to you in this?
Well, in the beginning, yeah, that's why I chimed in with Mary Ann, but are you asking me through the whole thing?
Yeah, just anywhere 1.10 through 1.17. That's sort of the section we're in here. So if there's a word or a concept or a guideline that really jumps out at you, like, this is really indicative of this section, we should we should try to find a picture for this. Is there anything that jumps off the page at you?
But she's also saying
have to-
to have multiple photos up at the main thing, right? Okay. And
Maybe
then,
we can think about that.
That was just about tree protection, so we are currently trying to get rid of all the plastic, because, you know, miles and miles of this horrible red plastic, it's up for years, it's even more ugly than, so we are trying to have people rent chain link fences that can be reused for each project and are way more effective than that plastic that gets ripped and down all the time,
so
so.
you're saying you wrap the chain link around the trees?
Yeah, we basically put the chain link right at the drip line of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is not practical, we have at least a drip line in the critical root zone. And that's something that the county now requires, but the city of Carmel, I don't think, to identify critical root zones, and that's really important. Yeah. And then, so trees should be protected at the line of the critical root zone, and a chain link fence is the best
That's good.
option to do that, and you don't have all that waste with the plastic.
I'll share that with forestry. That's a really good idea. Yeah.
And is the chain link without the poles? You just wrap the chain link without
No,
the?
no,
Oh,
it's
you
the
stake
chain
it
link
with the
sections,
poles.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah, they are, you know, they are screwed,
Mhm.
and they're very sturdy, and
Okay.
people can just, you know, and they're also high enough that people don't toss things over it, so.
And what about the old wood method of all the lumber?
It's the same thing, it's so
Mhm.
much waste.
Okay.
It's just an
Not reusable?
enormous- No, it's an enormous amount of waste.
Storing that and charging much less and have it reused and reused. People bring it back to the storage area, and then somebody else that's building, use it again and use it again and use it again, rather than cutting down trees to save trees.
Exactly,
Never
yeah, it
makes
makes no
any
sense.
sense to me.
Mhm.
And I even have a garage and thought, well, I'll offer one of my garage spots for all this lumber, you know? Just because it just seems so wasteful.
What if you had a stack of 2x4s of Public Works? You just drive in and load it up?
Well, there's that, but, so to Mary Ann's proposal, though, can we get a photo of that? Because if I'm sending folks, or if I'm suggesting go out to Carpenter, where now we have plastic out, and we'd like to be more forward-thinking than that, we would be nice to illustrate that.
Just took mine down today.
It doesn't even have to be, where did you?
Just took mine
Oh, you
down
just-
today. It's basically just, you know, either in a triangle or in a square, just chain link sections around the tree.
Do you know of any existing that we could photograph? Doesn't have to be in
Okay,
Carmel.
yeah. Let me see if another
Okay,
one
thank
is
you,
there.
okay, good. Because it'd be nice not to put a plastic example in if we're trying to get rid of that.
Exactly,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. May not be regulatory yet to require it, but let's at least put a
Yeah,
picture of
Yeah,
what it should look like.
Can we go back to that definition of significant trees? That's really, I think, critical, because it's in here, and my big concern now, because the forest is in such a state, is that, you know, the definition of significant for one may not be significant for another. To me, they're all significant, because there are getting to be so few of them. And so the Forest and Beach Commission will comment on the effects of any proposed work will have on significant trees during the project. I go back to Mary Ann's thing. I think that's really extremely important. And especially since of late times there have been a number of proposed structures that have asked for a major number of trees to be taken down for this project to be built. And I don't know what the end result of it was, because it was too late in the meeting. By the time they got there, I couldn't sit in front of the television for that length of time. But it seems to me that it's extremely important that we have a lot of eyes on what's going on with the forest, particularly now.
so maybe another possible addition back to text revision would be to, of course, we're gonna figure out what significant means, but basically in 1.1.3, that's about what the Forest and Beach Commission will do for an applicant, to say or ask that they also just look at the existing conditions of the forest on the site, not just significant trees.
Yeah.
So that phrasing of significant trees, it sounds very narrow. They're just gonna talk about the impact of your project on significant
Yeah,
trees only.
I would hesitate to start writing in our design guidelines what the Forest and Beach Commission will do. I think that's kind of laid out in their charter and duties within the code, so,
Well, maybe we should check it then and see
Yeah.
if that language
Yeah.
corresponds, and to whatever extent it does or doesn't
Mhm.
correspond, make it correspond, and then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, let's look at it, and
Okay.
also the forest master plan too. I think the current forest master plan is not a bad document, and it's under review by Forest and Beach, and, there's some significant issues with it. But I think this is a time, if we wanna make any changes or have any input as individuals, not per se as a group, but as individuals, that we, that we do so. Because it's gonna be the guiding thing for the next 20 years, just like what we do. And if they've missed the boat on certain things, now's the time to talk about it. And, so along with looking at, Forest and Beach's charge, their duties, in other words, I think we should also look at the forest master plan and be very familiar with what's being, laid out there. Because it's very detailed, it's very specific, and that's what everyone's supposed to be going by, as well as the general plan and the local coastal plan and Title 17.
I'm gonna do my favorite thing of trying to get us back onto the photographs here. So those are all very good points though, Melanie. So any other comments on section 1.10 through 1.17 on pictures that we might be missing or need to change?
So I'll just say, for me, there's not much illustration in this section, so I would just add more examples. So for example, everybody likes this wall curving by the tree. That seems like it helps explain that problem. I might throw in again, the chain link example, and maybe just a little bit more variety on trees that are not protected, or that are too crowded. I would add a little bit more. Again, it's just the visual impact of the words, but most of this is about protecting and preserving the trees in this first section. And so these are largely regulatory things, but I think, to me, the visuals are good reminders and emphasis for the text here. So I would just add sometimes some repeats, some more no's, that, and then hopefully this chain link thing.
And of the canopy.
And the canopy, yes, that's at the beginning.
We definitely need
Yes.
canopy.
Yep.
What about to screen buildings, 1.1.6?
So the comment was, what about the screening one, 1.1.6?
Project existing vegetation during construction to screen buildings. Does one of our photographs show vegetation that is used to screen buildings?
I feel like that comes a little bit more in force in 1.3, where we're preserving and enhancing the forested image of the site. This is almost just an I don't disagree with you, Neil, but it's almost like an explanatory, this is why we do this is why we protect the trees,
Right.
but then it comes into more force in the next clump here, or the third clump, the preserve, well, both, the second and the third clump. So we could put it there, but I think it might, you'll see, maybe Neil will come back to it, but you'll see at the next couple clumps whether it belongs there more.
Okay, should we move on to said next clump? Okay. 1.2.0 through 1.2.7, where we're starting off by saying preserve or enhance the informal vegetated open space character of the right-of-way.
I like these first two shots. I think the first one should be color. So we need another shot that shows how our roads beautifully curve around all these vegetative spots. But black and white's very hard to make out, I think, because these trees are so monochrome.
Good
Okay.
point.
So keep it, but find it in color or make it in color. Same thing with the second one, where we think that's a good picture.
Yeah, it could be a little brighter. It's good.
What's that thing you're talking about? It's out there right now, actually. We've got a couple other photos here. We've got looks like a culvert or drain, which looks like it goes with 1.2.4.
We should have our numbers by these things, too, like we discussed last week, that we need to have the numbers. You could have more than one number there, but at least, you know, somebody's not confused about,
What we're trying to illustrate.
yeah.
Yeah, agreed. We'll add key numbers underneath.
Okay.
So I have always had a question about this gutter one because, I mean, it definitely is a muni guideline because generally it's the city that's working on the gutters. I assume there are times when private property owners are interfering with the gutters and therefore have to repair or maintain them in a certain way. This doesn't seem like a great example of a gutter that might be something a private property owner would have to interfere with. This looks more like a municipal gutter to me, but I could be wrong about that.
These exist on private property too.
You know, like the
Yeah.
one on your project on, near Taurus, not Taurus, Junipero and 10th. That has a huge gutter going through that property that looks like this, I think. But-
Well,
yeah.
I'm very confused about that section altogether, because why is that in the residential design guidelines? This belongs into city public spaces, spaces ordinance. It has really nothing to do, I think, with residential design guidelines. Because we are not working ever on stuff like that.
So like on your project on 10th and Junipero, where they had this huge water flow through, and I just walked by and I see that, you all were not permitted to touch it, or, yeah, so it's a city resource.
So that entire, there's a huge easement, right? Drainage easement that went through the property, and we were allowed to build over it and have this bridge
Right.
thing over it, covered bridge thing over it.
Right.
But in the public right of way, as this describes and depicts, it doesn't belong, I think, into residential design guidelines.
Are there circumstances where these things are somehow unprotected and private property owners can interfere with them and
So there are
need to be corrected?
There are situations where we have drainage that goes through a property and does connect out. So like one example is at the end of Junipero and 13th. There is some drainage that goes through private property there, and it is rock lined and it goes out to the street. So this would be, I think, where this is instructive, is if you're gonna have to have drainage passing through your property, don't just do an asphalt chute, basically, to the other side.
Would private property owners be allowed to interfere with that channel without coming to the city, or does the city kind of own that in a sense of owning the maintenance and the aesthetics of it?
If it goes through private property, if it's not on city land, then they own it.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to work with us in order to connect it to our system, but visually what it looks like, if this isn't in here, then we don't have a way to control what it looks like. Certainly this is not solving a 90% problem. This is solving a 10% problem, this guideline. But it is a situation that exists in some small places around town, I will say.
On private property?
On private property, that's
Okay.
correct.
So then maybe we need to keep it.
Yeah.
And maybe, yeah, go ahead.
But this regulates the public right of way. It says never keep in the right of way any irrigation equipment or unpermitted paving, gravel boulders. Well, why is the homeowner in charge of that? This is the city, so if there's something unpermitted, you go take it out. It's the city's job and not the private property owner's job to take care of any of this.
So we were talking about the next one, which is 1.2.4, but you're right, this one is the one above it, this is the numbering problem
And
again.
that's some of the issue. I mean, it was a big issue in our street. I mean, the boulders would constantly show up for people, and then no parking here signs, and
Right, and then we go take them. We ask them to remove them, and if they don't, we go take them.
yeah.
But I think, but I can imagine, that I'm pretty sure this is from the existing design guidelines. The reason is probably if you're coming and you're designing a project and you look at your overall site, you're thinking, maybe I want to do some work in the right of way and partner with the city, because we do allow people to maintain and improve the right of way in front of their house with like landscaping. So this is instructive about, you know, not putting logs, boulders, gravel, the things that we don't want to see them do if they're going to work with us on designing that right of way space.
But wouldn't it be better, rather than having things in 2 and 3 places, if there was just a reference to the new landscape guidelines, and they go ahead and they are then very in-depth and describe everything that you can and can't do? Because it's very difficult to keep consistency in 2 documents describing the same thing, you know, in the same language. And if there is a document that regulates the public right-of-way, then that is the document we should refer to, rather than repeating some of it but not all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave it to the commission. I mean, this whole section the committee, this whole section 1.2.0 is about preserving or enhancing the informal vegetated open space character of the right-of-way. I think, you know, some food for thought is the reason in the residential district that this kind of does make sense is because the right-of-way in the residential district is very different than the right-of-way in the commercial district. The commercial district is hardscape, basically all the way around. There is an intentional blending of the right-of-way and private property in the residential district. So there is definitely a nexus there. So if you're working on your residential design with using this as a tool, it does make sense to have some reference to what this says versus saying, okay, now go check out this other document that's about right-of-way stuff design. So you have to work with the right-of-way design document for your residential project and your residential design guidelines. So it's just food for thought. I mean, it can go either way. But I believe that's why this stuff is here.
I think it also relates to that diagram from Nori, from the old guideline that's on page 3 of this, where it shows the public right-of-way being connected to, and hopefully encouraging folks to create similar landscapes in both sides of the geographical line. The property line is in different spots for all different people all over residential, but we're trying to get a consistent look and feel where that property line crosses over in its invisible ways sometimes. So I think, I totally take your point, and in a perfect world, you know, I think if we didn't permit people to touch the right-of-way at all, then we would move this out of here entirely. But because we permit folks and sometimes encourage them to participate in the maintenance and care, well-being of that right-of-way, and people tend to do it anyway, even if we didn't encourage them, then we have to have it here, unfortunately, maybe. I mean, logically, you're right, it's public property, but I actually don't think we can give it up unless we remove the right of people to use the right-of-way in any way, touch it in any way, and then there's the issue of crossing over it with your hardscape or your softscape to get to your door, and then you're in the right-of-way also. So I just think it's messy, but it's just the case that people are in the private folks are in the public right-of-way doing stuff. So we've got a hand up here.
Oh, go ahead, Carol.
I was just going to say, with all the later recent drainage requirements on houses where we have swales and we have ditches, which I prefer to call seasonal creeks, through our properties and so forth, that I think it becomes more relevant that we somehow, if we are working with the right-of-way, that we make it all kind of flow together, no pun intended.
So maybe, and again, back to the photography here, unless the majority agrees we should somehow petition the council to get folks out of the right-of-way entirely, which I think is a losing battle. We wouldn't win that one. But I think we just have to see, are we visually doing the right thing for this clump, 1.2.0? Do we okay, you've got some thoughts?
I think what we need is to have several pictures of blending, appropriate blending and inappropriate blending. I think we should go around town and we should concentrate, we on the committee as well as you out there next to us, look and come up and see if you see any pictures, because there are some good examples of the bad and excellent examples of the good. And we should have a little of both in here, because right-of-way in this town is extremely important. Everybody in this town practically thinks that they own the public right-of-way, you know? And they think they can do whatever they want. And sometimes it's okay, sometimes it fits well, but other times it's atrocious. And I think that we need, in this document, to help people do the right thing, and because otherwise we're just going to have more of what we've got now, which is just a total mishmash. Doug, did you want this? Oh, I'm sorry.
Neil has his hand up.
It's okay, I can hold it. They can hear you. I watched it
Okay.
last time. Yeah.
This may be a non-issue, but I was thinking about driveways, and typically when we design the driveway, we pave it, and we take the paving all the way out to the asphalt. Would it be, what about a picture that does not do that, where the paving stops further up on the property and then goes to decomposed granite or something, to suggest that we are gentle coming onto the property, instead of carrying the concrete driveway all the way out to the asphalt?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really something we want to get into.
In mind that you've seen around town?
I can look for it. I've often thought of this myself. Because when I'm driving around and you see those driveways come out, it seems a little bit abrupt.
Yeah, and harsh.
So I know from talking to our public works friends, there has to be a connection to the street with like a foot or two that's asphalt off the street. It can stop and turn into something else, but that connection to the street has to be asphalt, because as they work on this, something like that. I can't remember what the numbers are, but in order for them to be able to work on the streets, they have to have a surface that they can connect to. So it can't be right up to the edge of the asphalt. It can't be loose materials.
But looking for examples, to your point, Neil, of like how folks have creatively created connectivity of the forest across a driving space, even if there's a little bit of an apron as you come off the asphalt, those would be great examples to have. And I like, of course, Melanie's suggestion as well about good and bad examples. Especially, I think it would be easy to illustrate, don't use bedding plants and exotic species in the public right-of-way. It'd be very easy to have an X on one of those. And then really beautiful ones of native plants. I've seen, in fact, oh my God, on Taurus the other day, I saw a property that has the driveway, the walkway to the front door, and a parking spot, all hardscaped across the entire lot-to-lot line. So there's absolutely no foliage, because it's exactly the opposite of what we have in this guideline. And so that would be an X. I took a shot of that.
I've
But
seen that too.
you've seen it too.
It's an abomination.
But, yeah, so we do have a sketch about that, which I like this sketch. Marianne is very familiar.
On page 3, the third image is reversed.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
So it seems like a lot of additions.
Okay,
for the club.
yeah, 1.2, I think we've covered that clump. Oh,
I just want to add something for this added, the piece, the apron that you need to have paved. It would be nice if the city would be open to, or even encourage, that when city paving goes on, that private property owners are allowed to tack that on, because currently they are not. So you have to go back out. So city administrator vetoed that in the past. You may want to talk to him. And so owners then have to go out and hire their own setup, which is for one driveway apron about $1,800 just in setup fee. And so people don't do it. Like I ended up then not doing it because I figured that's just such a waste. Exactly.
Well, thanks for letting me, I didn't even know that was an issue. Yeah, so thanks for letting me know. I mean, we work with people in the commercial districts to help, do sidewalks. We'll partner with them and cover materials, so why not? So interesting. Thank you for letting me know that.
Good tip. Okay, we're on 1.3 clump.
Clump 1.3. 1.3.0, which starts off by saying preserve and enhance the forested image of the site. And that takes us from 1.3.1 to 1.3.6. Looks like we have a couple of pictures, the one that Doug pointed out that's flipped. Actually, we even have that in our notes here already, so we're good there. And then 1.3.2 forested front yard that we have here as a check for yes right now, whether we agree with that or not. Let's talk about that.
Well, that's all ceanothus, I think, so that should be okay as an illustration of a native species at least.
Got a couple nice oak trees there.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm sure there are other good ones. I mean, maybe we could recycle the one from the front that people thought, well, or we could leave it there, but the one that doesn't have upper canopy could be brought forward to the forested image of the site, yeah.
What's the pink thing here in that picture?
Isn't that like a bottle brush tree or something?
I think that's a bulbous tree next to the trunk here.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't maybe want that in our native guidelines.
It's a quick Photoshop, probably.
Yeah, we can Photoshop it or something.
It's like a rock rose or something. Yeah. I don't think so. It's a pretty brilliant. So we've got.
I'm okay with photoshopping, by the way, in general.
Sure.
Just eke it out. Yeah, okay, so I don't think anyone.
Stuff like this would be really, you just grab the green next to it and wash it out. It's very easy. Any other, let's look through, some of these other sections to see if there's words or concepts that we really think are not illustrated with a picture. This section only has the two images, one illustration and one photograph. So is there anything else?
I think this informal arrangement thing, I think there's a number of places that have formal, unnatural arrangements with little lollipop, like balls and stuff, and labyrinth. This is, we're in 1.3.4. I think we could get a lot of X's out of that one, where things are too formal in the front and even all the way up to the street. I think that's worth showing.
Yes.
This is not Versailles, after all, and I think sometimes we all want to make our homes a little Versailles, but that's not what what should be in the front.
I think if we find the right picture or two, it can also serve for 1.3.5 as well, because it could illustrate some of that informal ground cover as well.
Yeah, I think that if we could find a yes and a no for the ground cover, I think that would be nice to emphasize that as well.
The fake lawn.
Right, no,
That would be a no.
for 1.3.5.
Did you guys see that the state just passed legislation that we can ban fake lawns now? Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like literally just in the
Finally.
last week or two.
And we're ahead of them.
Yeah.
We're ahead of the curve.
Listening to these meetings,
That's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. We are leading the state.
I can assure you they're not.
Brandon. Yeah, no, then we feel even more emboldened to illustrate that 1.3.5 with an X and a check. That would be nice.
Can I just, one quick digression? I don't know how you all feel, but on the southwest corner of 7th and San Carlos, there's a spec house being built. And, we're talking about leaving room for plants and landscaping and such. Brandon, have you ever looked at that? Because it looks like that lot is built out to almost every single inch. I'd like to know how that was approved and.
8th and San Carlos, right?
Yeah, it's
Oh, it's eight.
I know which one
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
okay, yeah,
R1?
Yeah. I mean, how did that thing get?
It's because it's not in the residential zoning district, it's in the RC, so there's no lot lines there.
There it is.
Yeah, I know. That thing was approved some time ago.
As long as we don't sell them the frickin' public right of way,
Yeah.
so that they can have a bigger yard, then that's the law.
Yeah.
That's
But I just
my
don't
pit
think
peeve.
I think we need to revisit that. I really do.
Well, it's facing commercial, that's what it is, it's a transitional lot. So it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, but it's on a block that's all residential, and it's a block, it's across the street from
Is
all
the
those
next lot
condos or apartments.
R1 behind it?
I mean,
When you get to, not the lot, I think when you get to the next block.
Oh, for the full block is
I
RC?
think so.
you're kidding.
No, maybe that is a rezoning thing.
I mean.
But this, I mean, not to go down the rabbit hole of zoning, but this is the thing with zoning. You always have an more intense use up against a less intense use. And there's always those cusp areas. And so that unfortunate happens sometimes.
Why didn't it stop at the north side of it? That would have been logical. But, I mean, everybody else, including Nancy and Tim Toomey, are on that block. It's all residential, and it's all being improved and upgraded and everything. And then they have this thing on it.
Well, let's let the Toomeys take the lead on our rezoning
Oh, Nancy, I'll help you.
campaign.
We got nothing else to work on. Let's
That's
do
right,
that.
that's right.
Let's start rezoning the city. That's,
Well, and then, does anyone have any beautiful examples? They may not exist in town, of a beautiful kind of informal, ground cover, walkable type of meadow. I'm looking at you, Mary Ann. Do you know of anybody who's done this well?
For a residential lot?
Yes.
Yeah, there's,
sure we can
there's
find some.
plenty of.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have several.
yeah.
Can you help us with that?
Can
Yeah.
you think, okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, we're, just bear in mind that what we're doing here is we're creating our shoot list basically. So we
Wasn't
just,
sure that existed.
yeah, oh, it does,
Okay.
for sure. We'll find that. So anything else in the 1.3.0 clump, as we're affectionately calling them now? Okay, let's move on to 1.4 then. So preserve unaltered pre-development water drainage ways as site amenities. Seasonal creeks. I think this picture seems pretty good.
I like the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this outside of Public Works?
No, this is not the Public Works one, I don't believe. This is one that we took in this most recent round, though. I don't know where we got it from.
That's great.
Yeah.
I want one.
Well, that's very much in keeping with erosion control.
Yeah, it's a short section, so I mean, this may be good enough. I mean, you really don't need a bunch of pictures of that, so. That takes us to 2.0. We've moved on. So, a big header. So this is the 2.0 large header, says subordinate every built structure to the character and continuity of the forest, natural environment, and to the natural features of its own site. We have this picture of a fence around a tree. I'm not sure that really is a grand enough sort of picture, but I don't know what everyone else thinks to sort of convey this bigger concept.
I think it could be one of many. One of the things I like about it is that, the tree is clearly intact, completely as God made it, and then you have the fence going around it. Anything that does that, I think we could use multiple examples because this is structures. So we want to make sure that no one puts anything, whether it's a building or a fence or a wall or a barbecue, in a way that, so I think multiple examples here could help.
And one of the notes I took last time was the sort of formatting concept of, for these bigger headers, maybe they're their own page, and then you have underneath it you have pictures of sort of like these big heady concepts before you get into the lower sections. So
But
that,
are other people okay with I'm not saying it's mine, but the one I like, this fence shot?
Yeah, it's-
People like it,
it's
okay.
But we need more.
But we need more.
yeah,
We need
good.
more.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can then look through 2.1 and all those ones. Nestle a building in the trees to minimize the mass visible from public view. And this takes us from 2.1.1 to 2.1.4. It looks like we have quite a few sketches here already. The first sketch goes to 2.1.1, the second one to 0.2, the next one to 0.3, and the last one to 0.4. Any thoughts or comments on these? Do we need?
Okay, the contours. I don't know that those are, the ones that are drawn are, the last two here on the page are totally clear to people.
About following
I
the
get-
site's contours?
Yeah, I guess it's obvious. But what's the
I think that is a permissible and encouraged alternative to, I think, if I'm remembering the regs correctly, to, building up on the site where we can see it. So I think it is encouraged. In fact, we get bonuses for putting square footage in the ground as opposed to using up the small lots that we have.
As long as it's not destroying the tree roots.
Right.
Yeah, that's the issue. Okay.
Is that picture next to 2.9.2 an X or a check?
I think that's a small building, so I'm guessing that's a check.
But it also is next to the stuff that talks about building up on the site and obviously has a large underfloor area.
That's a weird picture.
Probably take out.
Nobody loves that shot.
Maybe replace.
Replace with another small building.
Yeah, it's not a good example.
Oh, I see, you do have different. Looking at something, there is a difference between,
Grab the one behind you.
well, I put it on the desk, but now it's gone. Yeah, there is a difference between 23 and 26, because this is what 23 looks like.
It
May
might just-
23.
It might just be the pages, it's repaginated or something.
Does this image show up on the next page for you? Yeah.
It's the next page.
Yeah. Yeah, so it looks like it's just formatting how it's printed.
So people want a picture of a small building, but just not that small building.
Yeah, a small house tucked in.
I think it would be nice to show some X's here, position buildings to avoid cutting into the canopy of established trees. I bet you we can find some bad examples of that.
Which one was that?
That's 2.1.1. And it seems like this 2.1.0, the main heading of nestling a building in the trees, we ought to be able to find some really lovely, almost completely obscured, tree, buildings that are really beautifully nestled.
Yeah.
Currently you cannot get a fire final with any branches overhanging a tree, overhanging a roof. So let alone insurance issues, but just fire final you won't be able to get, so.
When did that start, do you know?
Well, it's enforced now. It was actually in place, the ordinance was in place for a longer period of time that you shouldn't have branches overhanging a roof, but it's really being enforced now. So for us putting in structures that are nestled in with tree branches over it, it's unrealistic, it's not permissible,
I've got a perfect
So-
picture.
So tell us about, do you know anything about that, Brandon? Because I'm just thinking of this beautiful home that was built on Ridgewood maybe 10-ish years ago or 15 years ago that I had on a home tour once for the school, where the entire concept of the building was to undulate underneath the oak canopy.
Which is, the next point is you're not supposed to build under oak canopies. So,
Because
You
if
know,
you're under the
exactly.
canopy, you're on top of the root zone.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's another
So you
thing
can't
you're
build
not
on the
supposed to-
property at all then in this case, because this was like a forested
Yeah,
site.
that-
You'd have to remove the tree. I mean,
yeah. Oh,
that's,
no, then
we'll wait for
what we
Melanie to fall back,
typically do is
get back up
remove-
out of her chair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
remove basically
forget it.
one tree, in order to save all the others, right? And not build under the tree.
Yeah, there's several houses, I mean, even ones that are under construction right now that wouldn't be allowed. I mean, look at like pine trees down this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Thomas Hood House down here that has an oak tree. I mean, both of those actually have oak trees coming up right through the middle of them. That's just,
You can't.
you wouldn't be able to do that now.
So how do we do this? I mean, seriously, this is like new to this committee. I've never heard this raised before in the entire years or so that we've been meeting. So if we have a forest on a private site and we're trying to get a fire approval, trying to preserve the drip line, trying to preserve the nestled look, and trying to preserve the forest, you can't say these lots are unbuildable.
No.
So.
You'd have a takings at that point. So this is where the tree removal, you have to have reasonable use of your site. And so that's where the tree removals come in, and like Mary Ann said, it's removing one tree to, pick the least impactful area on the site to put development.
Yeah, well, then, I mean,
You have,
So maybe, let me just throw out one quick thing before you pass the mic. Maybe this is, again, remember 2.1.0 says from the public view. So a lot of this might just have to do with the front setback and the public right-of-way. And again, when we go out to photograph, we're photographing the view from the public, which
Yes. Yeah.
of course, preserves rights on the private side of the line. But go ahead, down there.
I just had a question about building underneath the canopy, and then having to take the tree out instead. Wouldn't it be better to be able to build under it than take it out? I mean, we would be preserving the tree. You might not be able to get fire insurance, which is common everywhere. When I lived in
insurance, you won't get occupancy.
You don't have occupancy? No, you will not get occupancy.
That's nice.
I never heard of
She
that.
says it's being
It's been around for a while, but it's just more recently it's been enforced because of all the fires and the insurance discussions. But bear in mind, this is just,
It's not allowed?
that's right. Yeah, but bear in mind, this is just a branch though. So like you can have the tree can be next to the house, and just you can't have branches directly over the top. And to Mary Ann's point, if you have the bulk of a canopy over the top of a house, or that's where you want to put your house. You shouldn't be putting a house there anyway, because it's going to be right on top of the critical root zone anyway. So it's not as damning as it sounds. Maybe like you can get around some of this by intelligent sort of like placement of a house, pruning, and things like that. So it's not like a complete no-fly zone. But yeah, this has been in place for some time. It's just more stringently enforced as of late.
But the money of the homes are under canopy to some extent.
Mhm.
Yep.
When we do site plans and we draw the canopy of the tree, and we're almost always under the canopy.
Or even.
Yep, that's you're right. You're identifying facts here. Yes, absolutely.
But the guideline emphasizes the trees that are in view for the public right of way, and then those are the trees that should be the least likely to be removed
Yes.
or to
Yeah.
be saved.
Yeah.
That's an important thing to emphasize.
Which you have to, from this conversation, I'm starting to realize just this makes this even more
more important,
important,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It makes it
Mhm.
even more important that the public right-of-way is handled properly,
Yeah.
which we don't have.
No.
We know we don't have that. And the hope is, of course, when we finish this, that we will have the tools to make that better.
I think we need to relook at our wording on the right of way again to see if there are any spots where we could beef up our language a little bit. Because,
So the heading, I think itself, nestle a tree in the trees to minimize mass is misleading and
Yeah.
should be reworded.
Behind the trees, you can just change the preposition.
well, as long as, you know, you can have something nestled in the trees without, I mean, I can see how it's possible, you know, to do that. I mean, I'm just thinking, you know.
With the
you
branch
can't do-
removal,
Yeah,
things
you
like
know,
that,
yeah.
yeah.
But couldn't the heading be something like, do not remove trees which screen buildings from a public right-of-way?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So, yeah. Because you have the 10-foot setback anyway from the
Yeah.
front, so you would have that, plus the right-of-way, you can grow trees in that area.
Yeah. As long as you're not in the RC.
So I would just add for this clump that it seems to me we could have a fair number of X's that we don't have now, of folks doing crappy, I remember these from the planning commission, crappy retaining walls all over the joint, overhangs. I think we have a number of X options that would provide future planning commissioners guidance, like, oh, this kind of resembles this. Your proposal kind of resembles, can't you just make this a natural slope? Because we don't want this. So I think, I would add some X's here to this clump. David, did you have a hand up?
Okay. Let's move on to 2.2.0, follow the site's natural contours, which gets us from 2.2.1 to 2.2.4.
This is kind of more of the same to me. I've got a note for text revisions.
So we've got some more diagrams here that show minimizing excavation.
I see that a photo is behind.
Yeah, it looks like-
the photo here.
Yeah.
That must be, you know what that photo is? I think it's I think it's what I was talking about before, where there's too much driveway in the front, because I see the little X on there, but obviously it's got printout problem.
That's a shared driveway between two different properties.
There's another image behind it that just didn't get printed right.
Yeah, you can see the top of a red X
I think
there.
that one shows the opposite, Nancy. So, I'm sure it's a nice diagram. I guess we have to take our word for it.
I just have a question about the shared driveway. There's a shared driveway that I saw back over there behind the police station, and it's really wide, so it's almost just like two driveways all stuck together, and it looks like a huge parking lot. Can we put in something where it has to go down to one lane, or some restriction on how wide it gets? If it's double width, it's not beneficial. It's better to have them separate.
Yeah, because then you have planting opportunities.
We already have a limit on the width of driveways.
Yeah, we do. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, the municipal code limits the width of driveways, even the shared ones. I mean, that may be a non-conforming one that you're thinking of, because I think we addressed that in the zoning code. Yeah, I'll double check that though, but I'm pretty sure we already addressed that.
But I think what maybe David's pointing out is that if property owner A and B both have their correct width and they happen to put them next to each other, then what you have is something that looks double wide and appears to be double wide, even though it's compliant for each property. And that's worse, he's saying. It'd be better to have a shared driveway that's half of the width that it can be on either property. But as soon as you combine them for a double wide, now you're missing the opportunity to continue the forest between the driveways.
And it's very abrupt, it's very abrupt.
The problem is the lots aren't often large enough to
Yeah.
split the driveways.
Yeah, Eric's
I mean,
got a
in this
point.
image,
Can't get
it works nicely because you have the smaller curb cut and then it separates, but sometimes you just don't have the space
Yeah.
to separate it off. It was an interesting thing in the HRD at their last meeting. There was actually a house on it, an historic house, that had a shared garage structure. So it actually worked quite well because they're actually right next to the property line went through the garage.
So, but to this point, we can correct this, tweak it in 2.3.4, where it says sharing a single driveway. We can clarify that it's a single width driveway, not sharing an extra wide driveway.
Also, what I saw back there may have been that was the only places they could each put their driveways. Is there some way that we can say if the driveways have to touch, then they have to be single wide? They have to come down to a single wide.
Well, you can't force someone to share it, I don't think, but I mean, this is something we're saying. Minimize this to the extent you can. If they can reach an agreement with their neighbor, I'll have half a driveway on my side and you have half a driveway on your side. But I don't know that we can't probably force them because we allow a 9-foot no matter what, unless we change the regs.
Yeah.
Okay, it works if you have both garages at the back of the site, and then you're able to enter with a smaller curb cut and then separate. But if any garages that are toward the front, that's not feasible.
Right.
And I would
Without a
require
very
to
much
put a
larger opening at the site.
vegetation between two driveways that were right next to each other. So there's some sort of code that requires that you have a strip of vegetation down the middle to break it up. I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah, I think there's something about that in the zoning code as well. Yeah.
Well, it seems like that could be clarified, in both
It
ways.
says it already in 2.4.1. Separated driveway from a walkway with plantings, avoid formal and urban paving treatment, soften paved edges with landscaping. So,
But we would have to add here, and that may be the place to add it, to address Carol, we'd have to add separated driveway from another driveway. And from, yeah. Okay, that's a good catch.
Okay, so we just went from 2.2 to 2.4? Was that 2.4.1?
Yeah.
Okay.
just because that's where it's.
Yeah, sure, yeah, I just want to make sure I
We're
get the
going back,
note.
though. We're going back
No, it's
to the
okay.
photos. Where were we, Brandon?
We were in the 2.2.0.
Okay. Follow the site's natural contours.
Yep, and we have diagrams here. This may not be something where photos are gonna be, because we're talking now, these ones where it's full site type of things, it's difficult to get a photo to really represent versus diagrams of showing excavation and things like this. So we may be good with just the diagrams in this one. I don't know what
Although
everybody
there I
thinks.
would also give a pitch for some X's where people have not done this, because you're right, these diagrams are more on the plus side and they're good. But I would show, just so again, the planning commissioners know what they're looking for. We're looking to avoid all these walls.
Yep,
cetera.
and I think we have an X that's hidden by
I know,
a
but
check
that's a
here.
driveway X.
Yeah, okay.
Not a foundation X.
And we need a check in the second image up from the bottom page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So in this tiered image here, graphic, that's a good thing, correct?
That's considered a good.
Yes.
And there is a check there, and there should be a check above too for that little garden well, that I don't think that check is on there. So right here, so this, the diagram where, that's above the retaining wall stepping is about reducing the height and getting that building nestled into the ground and following the contours of the site. And that's a check, just for everybody's information, that people are okay, this community is okay with burying space or half burying it on a full, on a slope site in order to reduce the height and bulk of the building. So X is for add retainage. Oh, yes.
Okay, how about 2.3.0, subordinate parking facilities to the house and the site? We've got 2.3.1 through .4, so we've got 4 of these here. We've got some checks. You got a garage that's set back with some landscaping. You got another garage, doesn't have a check by it, but it looks like that may be intended to be a check because the driveway's set back. And then we've got our famous walls next to a driveway that you can see from the street that we have an X next to.
I just have just a question about the garage behind all the foliage. I think that maybe we could show more, something that is not like showing that you have to obscure it with foliage, because that looks inaccessible. So some people might look at it and go, wait, how am I supposed to, you know?
How am I gonna get my car past that?
Right, yeah.
Or even that same house with a different angle.
Yeah.
Would show,
Yeah.
yeah.
This would be a good location for the house that Mayor White has brought up several times on Casanova, where the. Fort Casanova? Yes. Casanova.
As an X, I'm sure you're saying, Doug, right? Okay, good, just wanna get that clear.
Remind me which cross street that is?
Eighth Casanova, about 4 south of, on Casanova, about 4 southwest.
Yeah, right across from the back of the Golden Belt.
Yeah.
8th and 9th?
Yeah. Right across the street from the back of the Golden Belt.
Well, here I think there just might be some more beautiful examples of good subordinated parking garages where the design of the garage is really beautifully integrated into the architecture. That's one of the ways we suggest doing that.
Well, that second image from the bottom should be blowing up. That's
Yeah.
That's a good
That's
one.
a nice,
Mhm.
And again,
that's on,
different angle.
at San Antonio and San Lucia, isn't it?
Yes.
And similarly, there might be some more egregious retaining wall things that really make it clear how bad that can look. This one's kind of old and, I don't know, it's,
I can think of a couple where it's
Can you?
taller than I am,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's the ones that I photographs of the 3 houses, I think on, is it Ocean View on Carmel Point, where they have the massive retaining walls down to a lower garage, which is basically a full story below grade, which really creates some massive walls for you. I mean, there is that slight tension or contradiction or balance, I would describe it as, that needs to happen if you're advocating to subordinate garages and maybe put them a little bit below grade, which can work really nicely, and that will by necessity create some retaining necessary for that.
but not massive.
Using those as an example of, really overdoing it is a good. There's one in Carmel too, I forget whether, I think I remember the designer's name, but it's a stucco house, which is almost a full garage below grade, where there's just massive ramp effect that, killer driveway. I don't know how you.
Yeah, there's a couple too that actually don't even go down straight. They go down and curve. Like you could never get a car in there. I don't even know how that got approved. Yeah.
So what you might be saying, Eric, is that there's also room in this area for a photograph of something that's a subtle decline with a subtle amount of retainage or landscaping, so that we show how you actually subordinate the garage through topography without doing these crazy walls. Okay. And basically channeling a comment, this might have been your comment, Nancy, from last time, about beauty, the beautiful, like all our photos having a kind of a test that they have to pass, which is this a beautiful, if it's a check, is it a beautiful example of something in Carmel? Does it give us the atmosphere of the village? And again, I might apply that here, like maybe, again, the ugly ones, fine, the X's, whatever, but the pretty ones have to pass that test, I think.
Could I go back to 2.3.1, that hedge on the driveway? I don't think that photo, that is obviously not being used as a garage. You got a planter in front of one of the garage doors, and you got the other side blocked, so if we're talking garages, I don't think it.
It almost looks like the one that shared garage.
Yeah, I don't think he's using for that purpose.
So you want a different one for that, Ken, that's more obviously a garage? A usable garage.
Okay. The picture underneath that is one that we were talking about, is actually a pretty good example of it being architecturally incorporated, but it just needs to be a bigger picture. And, yeah. All right, let's regroup here. 2.5. 2. Okay, we did 2.4.1. Okay, let's do 2.4. 2.4, design all paved areas to be small, informal, and intimate. So we already took one note on this, add the language about separate from adjacent driveways. Do we feel like we've got a good diagram here, a good picture? I don't think the picture actually goes with this one. Yeah, I think it's 2.5. I think you're right, Nancy. But the diagram certainly does. So do we need more? Do we want to try to get a pictorial picture representation of this one? What does everybody think?
I think that actually this diagram, Brandon, is for 2.3.4, the one that has the double X and check. Isn't it? Minimize the amount of paved surface.
It also calls for tire truck paving strips.
No, wait, maybe it's for some
I
reason.
think that diagram is good because it
Yeah.
separates the walkways. It's not, don't combine walkways and driveways. That's a good sketch for that and diagram for that.
Right, okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it would be nice to show some beautiful pavement treatments here, and also some cruddy pavement that we don't like. So this would just be sort of material shots of driveways. And I also think for the big heading to 2.4.0, it would be nice to show some beautiful small pathways. And again, the one I mentioned before on Taurus is the opposite of that. And I think we have to have an X. I mean, I don't know how that got there. It's old. It's old, but also people alter it over time. But this is, I think that's probably public right of way. That's, I don't really know where the line is there, but it's egregious. It's like you've paved the entire front between your house and the road. It is entirely paved.
Are you talking about that place on Taurus?
On Taurus again, yeah.
Well, we ought to get that picture.
Yeah.
Southeast corner of Mission and 10th. Your favorite. The fireman's house.
Okay, so southeast corner, Mission and 10th.
we giving these to Ian to take good pictures?
This is the shot list. for
Yeah,
the photographer.
yeah. So this same thing as before, if you want to email us, places you want, you can go on to the steering committee website. There's a link there where you can drop pictures in. Just make sure you name where it is so we can go retake, have professional photos taken of it. If all that's too much, just email me. We mostly just want to make sure we get all the good examples from people. Or bad examples. Good examples of bad things. Yep. All right, 2.5. Blend private landscape with that of the public right-of-way to make vegetated spaces appear larger and to improve continuity with the forest. This is, sort of adjacent to the one earlier we were talking about. This takes us from 2.5.1 all the way through 2.5.6. We got a couple of pictures here. Looks like that first photograph where you see the sort of flagstone pathway through the trees, and then the one after this.
Needs a check.
It does need a check. You're right. Good call. And then 2.5.5, which is on the next page, has a diagram. It talks about the treatment on top of it and the size of it and the scale and everything.
A language question, somebody please explain what that means. 2.5.3, last sentence, after the comma, by using open pickets wherein the size of the spaces are at least equal to the size of the material.
Width of the picket.
Yeah, so that's something we've talked about a few times. So if you have like a grape stake that's 2 inches wide, the space would be 2 inches. Grape stake's 2 inches, space is 2 inches. Yeah.
At least, or more.
At least, yeah.
And there's a whole lot of examples of that not being done.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, would it be clear to say the width of the picket instead of the size of the material? Yeah.
Well, we could say the width instead of size in
That
both
would be
places.
more clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can't say pickets unless we're sure it's gonna be a vertical picket, which
Yeah, I
don't know
think
if we-
that we talked about that last time. I think we were fine with material, but that's I think we might have even
Width.
changed that in the
Yeah, to
commercial
width.
was the width.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything else we see here that jumps out? I mean, do we like the pictures we're seeing? Do we see any concepts or keywords that really need a photograph to help represent them?
What is the very top one illustrating?
Page 8. You mean the page 8, the double diagram? Oh, you're on page 8?
Yeah.
Let me see, Carol, point.
That's this wall.
This one?
That one, okay, so the one that you're pointing to is the sort of like illustration of a brick wall with wrought iron on top of it. I believe that is tied to 2.5.5. In rare cases where a fence is needed, but the predominant building material is stone, masonry or stucco, a low garden wall of the same material and construction may fit into the site for 4 feet from grade. Though I'm not sure how that relates to that.
I'm not sure either.
It might, again, I think that this is a carryover from the original draft. I think it probably was associated with this, but perhaps in our opinion, it's really more about the formality of a fence, of a gate, or, of a wall, because we do have other proscriptions against, overly ornate or overly dominant, which is more of a detail issue. So maybe it's confusing that it's here.
Let's get another example.
Yeah.
This is not, it's always offended me, this thing.
Okay, so we're either gonna move it or eliminate it, it sounds like. If we can find a place where it goes, and maybe when we get to the end of this meeting, we'll know,
Just eliminate here.
yeah. Oh, but here, Ken, create an arbor, maintain a narrow with not a wide or heavy element. Isn't this your Fort Casanova, 2.5.4?
8 by 8.
That's the Fort Casanova, right? That was where we thought we should put it.
So this is,
Yeah, let's just take a picture of it then.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's for 2.5.4, yeah?
Yeah, get a picture of it. Well, it's definitely not Carmel.
Can use it and make 4 arbors out of it.
Share with your neighbor. Well, to me here, this main section is about trying to discourage enclosures in general. So if we could have a variety of lovely shots of open landscapes and privacy that's created through other means, then I think that would be helpful. And this blending, I think to me that means we need pictures of people's front yards that are nice, that are natural looking.
I mean, if it is really desirable to have a native landscape that flows from the street to the front of the house, arbors and other structures should be discouraged altogether, you know, because they are in real high interruption between that space. So I don't know if you want to even give guidance how to do it well. Basically, it should say that they are discouraged if we want to have a continuous landscape.
Yeah, and I think we've done a lot of good work in this group with that the front setback thing that we did, the opacity and the height, the sort of like the gradient back in. So I think that diagram and conversation is going to inform some of this too, because with that in place, if that's what we put in here, it's going to discourage those really bulky, heavy things towards the front of the site. It's going to push them back if you want to have it at all.
But then the language shouldn't say when creating an arbor. It should say arbors are discouraged, but if you have to have one, they should at least be constructed of light materials or something like that.
So I agree with you. And so what you're saying is that the device that this group came up with of stepping it, always design without a fence or wall. However, if you must, then we do this. So what we need to do is add that to the arbor language. So we have it above. We have it in 2.5.3, but we don't carry it over to the arbor. So we actually, it makes it sound like the arbor just is a given. Yeah, of course you're going to be doing an arbor.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to link that better to the 2.5.3, when you're doing a fence, this kind of thing.
Can't we just say that they're discouraged?
Well, we've avoided the word encourage, discourage,
I know, but
should,
I'm saying
shall, and
in
it would
this-
be the only time we'd ever say it, so I'm gonna try to hold the line for
Okay.
not, but we
Well-
can still do, as Marianne says, put it in the context of, this is not our first choice, this is not something we just do.
Right. Because they get pushed back, because look at how many arbors are in this town. People love arbors.
And some of them are really lovely. If
Yeah.
you have vines growing over the arches and so
Yeah,
forth,
wisteria and stuff,
Yeah.
but
But
maybe you
it's
don't have
not
to.
it's not part of a native landscape, so if that is the goal, to create a native landscape. We also have a lovely cactus garden in one of the front yards, I had to drive by it every day.
Yeah,
And it's beautiful in itself, but if the goal is to have a native
Yeah.
landscape, none of that stuff
Yeah.
should be
yeah.
in the front of the
Well,
house.
that's why I was just saying, discourage.
Well, Brandon is right that we've got new things in place for this year, which are pretty neat if they work. We're trying them out, which is the bigger the thing is, if it's at your head, if it's over your head, it's going to be further back.
Yeah.
Yeah, which would include an arbor, yeah. So then you would still have that natural on the front, and you would not till you get, 10 feet back into the site, you're gonna have this arbor. So then you're gonna have a little walkway that gets you back to the arbor, maybe.
But you're right.
People won't build it because they don't want that on their own property, yeah.
Yeah, but you're right, that this wording is different than the rest of the section, and it needs to be more consistent with the rest of the section. Okay, and we have 2.5.6 is what Brandon is referring to with the diagram, that needs to be put in here. So that's one thing to add, the setback diagram with a check.
Under the 2.5 section,
That would be
2.5.6.
2.5.6. So that's our new diagram for the kind of building envelope and yard envelope.
Was that gonna be proposed as ordinance revision as well, or is that just gonna go in the document?
The way we have it written, it functions more like a zoning code thing, but we'd have it illustrated in the design guidelines.
Would that able to
That would be codified, yeah, so because it deals more with heights and numbers, so it's more appropriate to be written out fully in the zoning code, but the picture would be here with a link over to the zoning code, yeah.
One more question, why do we need 2.5.5?
The group had discussed that it's just a given that we have landscape, then hedges, then fences, then walls. And unless we're ready to eliminate future walls, then we wanted to control them so that they do not get crazy like this diagram here. So this is, if you really can't do a landscape, and you really can't do a hedge, and you really can't do a fence, and you must have a wall for some reason, and the planning commission is considering it because you've proposed it and it fits with the architecture, then let's at least control it from a design standpoint. The only alternative that this group thought, and they weren't willing to do it, was we can't have any more walls. So I think that was what was before the group. Let me look at that again.
I keep reading this and it just doesn't make any sense to me, the language. I don't know what this is supposed to mean. What does that mean, the site if fully integrated with the topography and other hardscape, and if kept at 4 feet or less from grade? I don't.
I see where Mary Ann's going. I think that some of this is moot with the diagram we're talking about too. This whole last part about it being 4 feet or less from grade, like that's not really relevant anymore either. I think maybe the one part of this that's relevant is that if you do need to build a fence or something like that, if the main structure is stone, I think that's what it's trying to say. If the main structure is stone, then that's appropriate. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right, this is saying you should integrate the design of the wall. That's all this is saying. If you get to the point where the planning commission is gonna allow you to do a wall, which is the last resort, then at least have it integrated into the architecture of the building. Don't have just like, I want a wall and it's just separate from, I think that's all this is guidance for that rare case when, yeah. But what do
If you
think?
have a wooden clad building, for example, what does that mean integrated with architecture? Why that, for example, would mean, yeah, you could have a horizontally formed, board-formed concrete wall, but that doesn't fit in Carmel. So why don't you just say it needs to be a Carmel stone wall? And then wherever you have retainage, it's all Carmel stone, and then it fits, it nicely blends with the landscape, right? It ages nicely. If you have to have a wall, you just have to do a Carmel stone wall.
We were saying, and again, I think we could have, we were going to have a preferred materials list that you and I were talking about, which could prioritize Carmel stone. We could also have, all walls need to be Carmel stone if they're stone. This doesn't address that. This only addresses if your building is stucco, for example, then you could have a stucco landscape retainage wall or something. If you're
You would really want to permit that? They exist, I know.
Yeah, but they don't have to go for
Are they desirable is the question.
Well, so I'm now popping into my head is something that when we were driving around before we were a Brown Act body, and we saw that adobe building, which is in the golden rectangle, I will not remember the cross street, but it's on a corner, and it's white, off-white painted, and it's a beautiful old building. It's pure adobe, and then it has adobe stairs. It's very close to the pavement. And then it has small curbs that are adobe also, painted white adobe. And some of the curbs, I think, go around into the garden and become a very low wall. Now, what we're guiding here is that that's okay if you have a adobe building, you could have an adobe wall.
Or a brick.
Or if you have a brick building, you could have a brick wall. If we want to say no, as soon as you leave the building envelope, you have to switch to a common material that may not relate to the architecture. That would be a different direction. So far, we're in this prior direction, but we can reconsider.
Everyone knows that Carmel stone is hard to come by at best, so you can't really
Santa Rita
I mean,
stone.
the Santa Maria,
Yeah,
Then-
Santa
So we have
Maria
to,
stone is
just to
okay.
know, we have to name it
name it
properly or
properly.
Carmel-like stone.
Well,
No,
like
because
is
there's
difficult.
phony stone.
Because we don't know in the future whether, the other stones are gonna be available either, so it's just.
The other thing this
I would
requires,
hate to ban
Yeah.
all other stones.
all other
Sounds
masonry
extreme to
materials.
me.
Well, this also requires, just so we're clear, 2.5.5 currently does not permit you to put a wall on your property at all if you have a wood building. You understand that? You can put a fence, but this says in rare cases where a fence is needed, but the predominant building material is stone, masonry, or stucco. So again, the thought of and I'm not advocating for this, but just to record what we have already discussed here. The thought at the time was, if it's properly integrated into the architecture, it's okay to have a solid structure. Again, now with the caveat that it has to be farther back than it ever had to be before. But that we thought there was an importance to integrating the design and the materials with the building. And so if you don't have a stone building or a masonry building, you cannot build a wall. Even a Carmel stone wall right now in the future. That's what this says. So again, we can always reconsider it, but I just want to be clear what we're saying here and how that, and we got to that through a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
So, always room to revisit, but does David have his hand up?
Thank you. I think that we might consider doing something instead of the predominant building material. We might do something that is, what is the word?
Echoed or?
Yeah, doesn't have to be predominant, because that means 50%, over 50%. So if we find another word, I just throw that out there. Doesn't necessarily have to be predominant.
Well, now, let's remember what's at the table right now. Marianne is raising the option that instead of focusing on integrating the wall material with a solid material from the architecture, instead we separate the two and we say, this is, if you're gonna do stone, if you're gonna do a masonry wall at all, it should be Carmel stone, regardless of the materials of the building. Those are two different approaches, so.
maybe what I'm after is more the intent, that this should jive with the public right-of-way, this should be compatible with the street view, more than compatible with the house. That's where I'm getting at. I think it is more because what you find in town more than, more and more is like one person has one thing and then we only have lots that are 40 feet wide, and every 40 feet you have a brick wall next to a stucco wall next to a pickety fence next to now there are these ranch rail fences that are horizontal next to this. It's a complete mess, visual mess. So if we say that what is important is the street view and the continuous landscape. So if you have a block that has all beautiful, picket fence, you don't want a wall and light in the middle of that block, so that just state the intention that what's most important is the continuity of the streetscape.
So what I would offer is, we did this a couple times last week in the 3 weeks ago exercises. I think some of these we put a pin in for a policy conversation, because we do need to get through the photograph discussion.
Yeah.
We've already been at it for a couple hours now, and I know people start to wilt, rightfully so, after about 3 hours. So yeah, we're gonna lose Marianne at 3. So maybe if we could charge ahead and just kind of stay focused on the picture stuff, on images, and we can drop pins as we go along of some of these policy conversations, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I think there's also room here for tweaking this language for things that are, again, further back, closer to the building versus close.
Yep, I'm just saying for today's work, let's focus on the photographs and drop pins where we want to come back and tweak language, perhaps. So 2.6, preserve nighttime dark sky character of neighborhoods. This is 6.1 through 6.5. We got a couple pictures on the right-hand side here with green checks next to them.
We need access.
We need some X's. That's our first
X
opening
photos.
bid here, yep.
I agree with that.
I think more types of lighting than this light that usually goes over a pool table. mica, some interesting Spanish style. I mean, there's so many beautiful lights out there that should be encouraged rather than just this, because you see these all over now.
Yeah.
So add more photos of different types of, knowing that it won't be an exhaustive list. It'll just be more examples of appropriate style light fixtures.
Like a Tudor for a Tudor house, and what's the name of the other kind? Craftsman type lights.
Yeah, I would argue also that shielded, I think why that's there is it's such a clear example of something that's shielded, fully shielded, only a downlight. So we could also do an X through a very nice fixture that's not shielded. I think it would be good to show what is a shielded versus unshielded.
The other part of that is soft amber lights, like through mica or something, seem appropriate to me and are lovely at night. And are not per se shielded, but are very soft and pleasant. So I'm not sure, I guess I disagree with totally shielded lights.
Well, right now, we can only do that in the commercial district. In the residential district, we have to shield the fixtures and they have to be down. And I think that has to do with walking and keeping your eyes adjusted properly. So that would be a change to policy if we did that.
Well, look around. Nobody's doing it.
I know.
I wouldn't say nobody's doing it. A lot of people don't. Yeah, that's fair. And one of the things we've talked about is when the design guidelines are finished, we're going to have some of these line in the sand sort of moments where like, okay, we've got revised guidelines for lighting and we'll do sort of like a whole city type of thing.
Education.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind and gentle.
Anything else for 2.6? We've got add more X's, show more non-shielded, add some pictures of nice fixtures.
It might go with the style of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to appeal again to folks keeping their eyes open on their walks and just
Yeah.
sending snapshots in however way you want,
Okay.
please. Nancy has done that. Oh,
Yep.
she left. I'm going to compliment her.
Okay, 3.0 then, so there's a brand new section, new big header here. Fit every built structure within its neighborhood context. And we can, of course, find some pictures for that. But that gets us to the first one under that, 3.1.0, which goes from 1.1 to 1.7. Locate open spaces so that they visually link with that of adjacent properties. And we have a nice diagram right next to that showing a yes and a no. You can see how there's landscaping between the two that as you look at it from the street, it doesn't look like it's two houses stuck against each other. I think this is a pretty good diagram, but I don't know what everybody thinks.
Great diagram. Do we want to, so this is a note that I must have put in a long time ago that someone said early in the year about showing more than two structures. That was intended to be a critique of this diagram and whether we needed to diagram a third thing so people could understand how to move past the two. Or we could just alter these two diagrams to show three instead of two. But is that something still important to folks? Thank you.
Yeah, well, for me, I just want to make it clear, for people when they're designing, the next house to the right of the bottom diagram is going to have to be up next to that house in order to have an open space in between the next ones. And the two driveways are going to be fairly close together. In the diagram at the top, they're evenly spread out, but here you're going to have two driveways close together and the two driveways far apart, so on and so forth.
I think it's a good point. I mean, it does beg the question, how do we move beyond just our left-hand neighbor? If we've now stayed away from our left-hand neighbor, how do we also stay away from our right-hand neighbor? Ken?
Yeah, I was looking at the second picture down, or even the first one. If you got a city that's almost totally built out, how are you gonna have any of this be effective unless you're tearing down two lots side by side to renew or remodel? Most houses are gonna stay the way they are now.
Yeah,
This is about being responsive to what's already there in general and requiring the planning commission and the staff to make sure that it's not just the trees that people are responding to, but the open and closed parts, built parts of another neighbor. But I think it's true that we have to probably figure out, even though I love these diagrams, how to show that this isn't the end. How do you do a third?
Well, bear in mind, so I think one thing to keep in mind throughout all these conversations is that none of these guidelines live and die on their own. So each of these guidelines is part of a much bigger picture and a conversation and a thought process when planning staff or the planning commission review a project. So this is one guideline, but even the guidelines in the zoning code themselves talk about balancing. So you're probably not going to be consistent with every single guideline in here. That's not really possible. You have to balance for the greater good of a project. So if you have, these are things like this, when you have an opportunity to do things like this and it doesn't do it to the detriment of other guidelines that some may be more impactful, that's when you do it. So this isn't the kind of thing where on every single property in every part of the town, this is gonna happen.
I would just ask you how often you can run into it. If I get my neighbor to tear their house down and redesign it, I might be able to fit something very much look nice. But how often is this gonna be used?
But I think it,
I'm not saying take it out, it's just kind of superfluous.
I think it can be used fairly often. I think what it does try to encourage or discourage is this tendency on these 40 by 100 lots to have like almost these shotgun
Right,
houses,
right.
and everything feels like it's 40 by 100, 40 by 40, 40, and everyone's like taking up the same amount of space and not thinking about how landscape can be shared, how we, I mean, I think the idea should be how can we sometimes dissolve these property lines so they're not as perceptible? Like you don't always see the 40. It's almost like in music, you see the phrase rather than these bar lines.
But it's already,
Yeah, I think that's a good example of a picture, like how we can use pictures for that.
they're already set in place, how,
What we really are striving for is what Eric is integration.
Mm-hmm.
So that the block flows, that we don't have this kind of chopped up, environment. Like
So
the
we'll
forest,
look for pictures of flow.
Yeah, if the
Yeah.
forest, we're still, if that's what we're encouraging and that happens over time, it's all gonna be nicely integrated instead of all chopped up. Like, this is my castle, I don't want anything to do with the rest of you.
So just
You know?
in response to what I think David might be implying was what happens to the lot next to that? And
Yeah.
maybe that's okay that those lots maybe are a little, or the buildings are a little tighter between those, but then you still lose this 40-foot kind of property line thing, because the next lot feels like it's bigger. And this is a little closer, maybe the one next to it feels bigger as well. So there is a sacrifice, at some point between the buildings, but I think that creates, what you want to create is, like you're saying, variety, and it's not all just the same 40-foot.
Yeah, and yet variety, and yet there's a blending, there's a common overall, like landscaping tends to tie the street together. And that you don't just have totally separate landscaping and frontage with every single house. There's kind of a flow to the neighborhood.
And you take advantage of what's there.
Yeah.
The groves of trees that are clumped together would imply you need more space around that.
If I might, all of your suggestions make a lot of sense, so that's really good. The only thing I'm concerned about is somebody, who's coming in to develop something, to build something or whatever. They may get stuck on this, don't do this, do that kind of concept, and maybe not get this wider picture. And I think also what Marion was talking about, like trying to integrate the walls or the fences with each other and stuff like that. How it's written, I see it. But this is maybe just a little too limited of a thing. Maybe we need like an actual example of how it's integrated. I have a house that's across the street from mine, 2 houses, and they have their yards together and these big oak trees that span across. So I could take a picture of that. Maybe that'd be helpful.
And send the address, thank you, David. Yeah. And by the way, I think it's, to your point, it'll be interesting to see how photographable that is. One of my concerns for this section is it's incredibly important for the reasons that were just stated and very difficult potentially to photograph.
Which is why diagrams.
Yeah.
So, and to that point, I will ask the group, I'm just brainstorming here by myself on the end, since we're criticizing this diagram. And it seems to me maybe a way to clarify it is not, the answer is not a 3-structure diagram, but just a tweak to these 2 diagrams so that we show that one is an existing property, for example, on the left, and we repeat that existing property on both with a no, don't do this, don't respond to the left this way, and the other one is respond this way. And so that's following what has been done in other diagrams. But this, I think, is weird because it does imply that the 2 neighbors have to reconfigure at the same time, which is not, of course, ever going to be the case. So maybe it's just a correction of this diagram where the left-hand side is existing and not hatched or whatever, and the other one is an existing. So then we can just say, this is about responding to your neighbor.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a correction really that's needed here, even though I love these diagrams, maybe they are, I mean, we've been confused about them for some time. So let's just see what we can do with the diagrams we have to sort of tweak them.
Or
And
pictures.
then the photos is a whole other issue. David, I'd love to see what you can capture there. But I do think it's gonna be easy to find X's here. We're gonna find some tunnels, we're gonna find some repeated massing where there's, even the tourist thing I'm talking about, where there's just shotguns next to each other. So I think the X's are gonna be easier to photograph, and I would encourage that in the shot list. So shotgun type thing.
Okay, so that's the first few there. What about like 1.4, 5, and 6? We've got, staggering the front setback of homes, which we have a diagram for. Side setbacks being staggered, we have that represented. Minimizing building mass as seen from adjacent properties by avoiding long interrupted wall planes.
I feel like here, again, it's gonna be easier to get the X's in photo form, and it's gonna be harder to get the checks, just it's harder to see if it's done right, which is, then it's succeeding, because you can't see it, so.
I have a similar concern about the bottom diagram where you show the 2 buildings too close together and, the wind tunnel thing. But that's, again, if you want to try and open up one side of the property to the to the existing, you're gonna have to create like this wind tunnel over here. In order to push it to one side, you're gonna have to, unless that house happens to be on the other side, but.
What it's not describing, of course, is the thing that should be discouraged is maybe that occurs over a short period of
The
the
depth.
100-foot, the depth of the lot.
Yeah.
But, so if it goes for 70 feet, that's really a problem. And that's the wind tunnel idea. But if it goes for 10 feet and it offsets, maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah, this is a section which is limited in what it can show. It's only one moment in the depth of the lot.
Plus, trees have so much to do with what you can do.
Yeah, yep.
For whatever it's worth, I personally detest the second diagram up on the page 9, where they've got the 2 garages very close to the front of the property line. I know they are slightly different, but these garages that are right up on the damn property line are friggin' dangerous. And people then try to park in front of them. It's just bad. So I would love to see that diagram change to be a little bit more nudging of the garages pushed back. And, it's my editorial comment, so it might be trash, but there you go. I said it.
You're not the only one to bring that
Yeah,
up.
good point.
Well, that's a general comment, right, for the whole idea of a detached garage within the front setback. That's
Yeah.
another,
It's horrible.
but
There's, in fact,
Street
There's a
that's
bunch
just
of
being built, or was just finished.
They're all over the place.
Historic house.
I wanted to comment on this because I agree with what you're saying so much about the garages. I think it's really bad form to ever encourage garages right on the property line or in the setback like the city council, the city's doing already. You have to back up generally, and the way people drive around here, it's incredible. They don't stop for stop signs, they don't stop for anything, anybody, day or night. And so, and also, it doesn't look good when you have a whole community of these itty bitty, non-usable structures right in the, I mean, if everyone put their car away, you might stretch it a long way to make an excuse that it's getting cars off the street and it's visually better for the community. But they're totally, inconsequential, most of these garages. All they do is harbor all the garbage that the family has, that they don't have another place to put. And so that's what they're for. They're not living spaces, they're just like saving you all from going to the storage facility.
Yep, I'm gonna make my pitch for us to get back on track here. So, once again, I hear what you're saying, Melanie. We've talked about garages in the front setback. The code currently encourages it, but we are gonna make a pitch for that to come out. But I'd ask everyone, let's try to stay on the photographs. Yep. Well, I was more talking to Melanie. Yeah, because I hear it, but let's try to focus on the images here if we can, because we're still only about halfway through.
I think we've got that one.
Okay.
Go to 3.2.
Okay, 3.2, we've got preserve views from nearby properties to natural features. This is a small section. We've got one diagram here on top.
I think it's a good diagram.
Okay.
The other thing it makes clear here is which one is the proposed. This is what we're talking about for the last diagram. So this is pre-existing with the hatch marks, and then the proposed one is beige.
Mhm.
So I think that's useful.
And it looks like 3.2.1 maybe is trying to be represented with this photo. A one-story house preserves view to the ocean with a check mark. Anybody think this could be a better photo? I mean, it's kind of a blended view over the top of this house of a little bit of, looks like maybe Point Lobos.
Can't we get another photo in there?
Yeah.
I mean, I really think we should have another photo.
Just add another one? Add a
Yeah.
second photo?
or a second one?
Yeah,
Which one? This one's okay, but add another one?
yeah. I mean, this gives you one view of what can be done. But I think we,
It really shows a lot of, I mean, do you really want to see all that roof line before you get to the ocean? I don't think it's,
For a peekaboo view.
yeah, I think another photo would be good.
Okay.
This one this is like, if you're walking along the street, and here, your eye will go to the ocean, will go to the view that you have, which is okay, but I think we need another one that's,
Great. Okay, great feedback. So that's a pretty short section. 3.3.0, organize functions on a site to preserve reasonable privacy for adjacent properties. Another shorty of a section. We've got 3.3.1 through 0.3. We do have one sketch on here giving us an example of what would be a no. So you've got a two-story house where they built a roof deck right over the top of somebody's outdoor living space, basically. So that looks like a pretty clear no.
I think we wanted to eliminate that line, didn't we?
What is that line?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that line is. Oh, I know what that is. You know what that is? So I think what happened was when Victoria was doing the good work of pulling everything over, her computer program probably flipped that line because some of the images got inverted. So if you were to invert that line, it would be the line of the arrow. There's an arrow, see, of him looking down.
Right.
That line got flipped. It's just on a different axis.
Hilarious.
So yeah, we can,
Easy to fix.
So we could provide a picture of that, because our house, we have the exact same thing, that we look down right into the front door area of the house behind us.
Why'd you build your house to look into someone's private property then?
Yeah, so we have an example of this done wrong. If you want a picture.
Okay.
Now we know.
That's very good of you, Nancy, to sacrifice yourself for the team effort. Don't do what I did.
You get a byline, yeah.
But if you want a picture.
Yeah, thank you, okay.
Would you submit it, Nancy? You're on top of things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other keywords or concepts in 3.3.0 that are jumping out at anybody that needs? We've got locate the size windows and skylights to avoid views in or out of neighboring indoor and outdoor active use areas. That seems pretty obvious.
All of this is really only illustrated by X's. It's gonna be very hard to show this nicely, and so that's okay.
Yeah,
This
that's okay.
happens as a don'ts. This is a don'ts photos.
So we're gonna do another photo.
Yeah. Nancy's gonna sacrifice her house.
Nancy's gonna hook us up. All right, 3.4, vary the design of a new building from that of nearby and abutting properties.
That's the one I was thinking to be qualified in general, because there's so many examples in town where houses that are related next to each other work really wonderfully. All the Comstock neighborhoods,
Yeah.
you know, people like on Locust Street, the Henry Hills relating together. There's a lot of different ones where it really works well. I think I showed a photo previously of the same houses on Carmel Point, which were different styles. They're built together as spec houses, it looked like, but they basically had the same floor plan. And so they had different styles and but the plans were like cookie cutter, one block to another. So I'm wondering whether this guideline could maybe be qualified so that could be more implied, that we don't want cookie cutter floor plans adjacent to lot that also will interfere with these ideas of shared landscapes and
Yeah, and I think we could,
creating variety around.
I think we can do that
farming
with,
trees.
photographs. I mean, that's part of the benefit of photographs, because, you know, like I keep sounding like a little bit of a broken record. Like, each of these guidelines are not meant to stand on their own. So if you had a project where it made sense, you know, what you're talking about, like it's complementary, actually, that would be one of the considerations for whoever was reviewing the project.
Yeah. So somewhere allow for that. I just
Mhm.
don't want this ultimatum.
I actually think that what Eric is raising here could, I'm gonna put a little star next to 3.4.0 as a principal discussion for later. The reason is that if we can find a way to illustrate what we're talking about, the good part where things kind of look alike, like a Comstock Village or the Henry Hill Village, they look alike and they work together beautifully. And then something where you're teasing out, this is the kind of homogeneity that we don't like. Whether it's
sometimes-
mostly massing maybe, and it's site approach. And so maybe that might lead to a slight tweaking of this language. So here's an example where the photos, we have to find the photos,
Yeah.
I think, in order to refine this language.
Sometimes, you know, just having these very divergent styles, for a better word, right next to each other is somewhat.
I think a better word is like complementary versus similarity. Like, complementary is really what we're after here. Yeah.
It's general enough to apply to a lot of things. that are
Okay.
processed.
Yeah, that's better, isn't it? So let's get those photos. So we're gonna get photos that are check marks of groupings of buildings that look nice together, even though they may be similar in their materiality, for example. Also examples of things that look horrible next to each other because they're too similar in whatever way. So this idea of complementarity might be the better rather than variety. Okay.
Okay. 3.5, we've got minimize negative impacts to surrounding properties, and we had a conversation, I believe, about this one under the commercial as well. So we've got 3 sub-policies about integrating utilities and services. Full architectural integration is not possible. Eliminate the visual impacts of utilities by grouping them and shielding them. In the cases where trash receptacles cannot be integrated with the building itself, we didn't finish that thought in this one. We finished it in the commercial one, though.
Oh, okay.
So we'll look to the commercial one.
Can you use the
Yeah.
similar words from the commercial?
Yeah, we'll just pull that over. But I think these are, like, this is one Doug and I looked at each other on the commercial one, so we've got, between the two of us, 1 million pictures of stuff like this. So this shouldn't be hard.
Residential, I don't know, do we have beautiful integrated
Mhm.
utilities? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and it's actually more about, and this is another one where the negatives, I think, are possibly more important
Yeah.
than the positives, yeah.
that one.
Yeah, we wrote it down in the commercial one.
Yeah, but I want it in ours.
We will.
Yeah, this is just a note.
It's just missing. Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
not the up-to-date.
Well,
This is not the final
this is not the final draft. This isn't going to council tomorrow. Don't worry. Don't worry. Even the draft that I'm talking about putting together, it's still coming back here before it goes anywhere else. So we'll get lots of pictures of all those utilities.
Yeah, pictures of both are fresh,
Mm-hmm.
including Sarah, like, two of them. Especially those with 3 hands sticking out.
can in front, that's easy, you can get
Yeah.
that all over town.
Yeah.
All right, number 4. So new section, new big header here. Retain and build upon Carmel's established architectural heritage.
Is that 2 different houses there? In that picture?
It is, yeah. The one on the left is,
Close together. 3 houses.
It's 3 houses?
Or maybe 2 houses.
no, it's just 2.
Each side of library.
It's down this way, yeah. Just down the hill, I think.
That looks like.
So 4.0, we can get a lot of good pictures of established architectural heritage.
I think that's what I would do. For the main heading, I would do all of our superstars, or a handful of our superstars.
statement and
Yeah.
of those out. Well, let's hold on, everybody. Okay. Let's let one conversation at a time, because we are kind of losing it a little bit.
We're gonna add pictures of historic houses.
Yeah. So what Victoria was saying was that 4.0 is a pretty easy one to get some examples. We just pull out of the historic context statement. We have really well documented examples of those superstars. So then that takes us to 4.1.0, and the sub policies there: preserve historic and existing resources.
Oh, and by the way, just to reemphasize, sorry, Brandon, unless people disagree with me, I think the heading of this should be literally the masterpieces. The 4.0.0, this is our chance to put a Frank Lloyd Wright house, a Comstock, all the quintessential versions as that header. That may not apply to any particular subset or that we haven't chosen for that. Sorry, just wanted to clarify.
So 4.1.0, preserve historic and existing resources. We've got 1.1 through 1.4. This might be one of those ones, we touched on these in the commercial district, where some of these probably don't warrant a ton of pictures, because this is more about preservation. I don't know how you represent that in a photograph necessarily. We can show possibly some. I'm looking at 4.1.2. One idea would be a picture of a historic property next to a non-historic property where there's some separation between the two.
I think you're right, Brandon. 4.1.2 is really the only one that we can illustrate either plus or minus. And so if we have a good example, that'd be great. I don't know,
I'm
we
sure
have an
we can find
example of
one,
a
yeah.
bad one?
Yeah.
We should be able to find pictures of that. That shouldn't be that difficult.
Okay. Anything else in 4.1.0 or that section that's jumping off the page at anybody? We can move on to 4.2.
This might be where, if this is premature, but if the council approves the concept of notable homes, that this might be in the section where we could show some pictures of that too, and reference to it or something like that.
Then there's this slight possible issue with 4.1.1, if you're talking about something that is designated as an historic resource. The phrasing of this implies that you can restore components and maybe reuse them in different places, which would be really allowed for an historic resource. So I don't know if you want to.
You mean you can't move around components if it's historically designated?
Yeah, but for Carol's notable home, you would be able to, I suppose, right? So maybe this isn't that important, but to distinguish that.
Well, do we get further guidance in some of these underlined links on that issue of how you, does it refer folks to the right thing?
Yeah, it does.
It does say preserve historic and existing resources, and so it does refer to doing that with the existing buildings, not necessarily the historic.
As long as, we can guide people to that stricter standard of you can't just restore a component, move it to the back or move it to the front if it was in the back. But that, if that's taken care of elsewhere, then I don't think we have to go into it into the design guidelines.
I believe it is.
Do you think it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
A whole book in itself.
It is. It is. We have a whole board that deals with that stuff. Do you know about that? Yeah. 4.2.0, continue Carmel's tradition of architectural diversity. And we've got 4 subsections here. I don't see any photos at the moment for this section, so let's see if we need any. This might be another one of those more theoretical sections, but let's take a look.
I think it would be easy to find here some X's of badly reproduced details of historic things. Like, we have a lot of discussions about Tudor around this table. There's a lot of stuff that does not have any resemblance to Tudor construction in town. That's just like a billboard for Tudor, just to throw that out. So for example, where you see like a cheap piece of plywood affixed to stucco, that's not Tudor construction. That isn't even a close facsimile of Tudor construction.
I think there's definitely images that could be put to this side of some, or
So this is, yeah, so this is 4.2.2. When reproducing historic styles or historic architecture, then we have to use the craftsmanship. And, you know, most of the homes here are properly resourced to do that. But sometimes we have examples where people don't understand maybe the language they're building in, and that needs to be, you know, explained. So I think that some X's of false examples.
Yeah, materials and design.
False
And McMansions
detail.
too, 424, that we have a number of McMansions we could show pictures of.
And may not even need to be from here, but to illustrate that
I-
overblown.
Yeah, I was thinking about using some very obvious bad examples of McMansions. The question is whether that's appropriate, because maybe they would never be used in Carmel, but maybe we can just show a worst case kind of McMansion tract home and say this is what we don't want, you know?
Absolutely.
So this is kind of about authentic details. The only thing here that might be what Eric was referring to before, at 4.2.1, to avoid uniformity in the appearance of speculative development and promote artistic expression, differentiate, and here this does touch on what you were saying, Eric, differentiate a new building's plan, massing, and overall design from nearby and abutting buildings. Which does not talk about the material being, so this is actually more what you were saying, I think, because this is about the design in the overall sense, not like, oh, it's wood here, so it can't be wood next door.
You know, I think this is.
This is good, okay, so we like this. I don't know how we illustrate that, unless we, again, have an illustration of how not to do that.
I mean, some of these, I think the language can just stand on its own too, when it's more philosophical.
I think one thing that would be helpful to get clear is what is commercial or industrial in appearance. Because I think a lot of people have different ideas about that. I've been working on it recently to get, you know, images of commercial or industrial facilities that look like some of the homes that have been built. And to just sort of say, okay, is this what we're talking about? Because if that is the case, then we need to avoid that, and we need to be clear about what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, so some examples of don't do this, it's too industrial.
Yeah.
And again, that does not have to be from here, I don't think. Or though I think you had advocated for everything being from here, but then you've got like somebody's house that they love as an X.
Yeah,
Doug doesn't care. Doug's-
It's a dangerous slope, probably.
Well, again, we can bring photos in and we can make that decision when we see the photos. And we just say, oh no, that's too harsh, or, yeah. If they're known to someone at the table, we will not include it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That's right.
Yeah, I guess unless we get express written consent like we have from Nancy to use her X picture. Yeah. All right. How about we move on to 4.3? I think we got some good direction on that one. 4.3.0, use traditional natural building materials. This one is, I think, another one of our sections that's ripe for a bunch of really great pictures, and a bunch of pictures showing what's not traditional natural.
It's easy to put a vinyl window in there. We can't do that. Just emphasize. It's almost like an exclamation point for the text.
Will it be obvious it's vinyl?
I think they are kind of obvious, even in the photos.
They are, yeah.
It's a good question.
It's one of the reasons that the aluminum clad wood is actually a good product, because those are not so obvious, because they have a little bit of texture to them and they can get the same relief on the molding. The vinyl ones, they can only kind of do square, and they just look bad. Even the, yeah.
And we can focus in so that it doesn't show whose house it is. Yes.
So I don't think this is just pictures of lots of materials. Yeah, got it, check.
Good, yeah.
Okay. 4.4.0, use manufactured materials according to traditional natural principles. This is 4.1 through 4.5. We don't have any pictures at the moment, but I think this is another one where we can just collect a lot of pictures and of good and bad, and we've got some pretty good direction here. You know, petroleum-based elements, that's our vinyl window friends we were just talking about. Don't use manufactured materials that fake or mimic natural other materials. Fake stone, fake textures.
Yeah, I think it's just
How
like
about
a, it's,
asphalt shakes, that's the problem, because those are used everywhere.
that is an exception we're allowing.
Would it be possible to consider doing poorly mimic natural or other materials? Because there are, and getting better, imitations that are useful and are not bad for the environment. So
I would imagine that Carol and David's, like one of the recent modern houses that was approved by the planning commission is being built. They have this fake wood. It's the one kind of near San Lucia. I forget what it's on.
Really?
But it's really bad.
yeah.
Well,
But there needs to be probably options for materials such as modified woods and things that are still
That's right.
wood.
Well, and that's where I think this preferred materials
Yeah.
list comes in,
Yeah.
where we can guide folks to the ones that really are excellent. I don't think we need to do it here, and
Yeah.
because we're gonna link to the preferred materials list, and there we will show folks, this is a high quality example, and hopefully that will clue people in.
And also, I mean, we just have to stress that, we just don't want a phony look. It has to either be the real thing, or it has to be, so in keeping with and appropriate, authentic to the other material that either you can't find or for some reason or another you can't use. I mean, we have to be pretty strict about that, because I just walked by a house that had a kind of fake stone. Oh my gosh, you guys. I mean, here you had a Carmel cottage that could have been done the right way, but what they did is they just slapped all this phony. I mean, it's so obvious, clear across the street from it, what it is. And so the little cottage is gone, and it was, as far as I'm concerned, as a look, because it's so obnoxious.
Well, maybe you can take a picture of that one for us, getting back to our photos.
We can always reject it.
Yeah.
Just show us
Yeah.
what you're
Yep.
seeing.
Maybe we should call this section the good, the bad, the ugly.
Or the whole project.
All right, section 5.0, design every built structure with modesty. This is our big headline header, so we'll search for some good representations of the larger concept, which will bring us down into 5.1.0, restrain building forms, materials, and details. And we have quite a number of sub-policies in this one, 5.1.1 through 1.7. We have a few pictures and diagrams on the side. You can see the one with the X at the top, that's a photograph. There's a lot going on there with the different roof elements. And then the diagram below that talks about simple primary volume remains apparent, so that versus the image on the right where it's, you know, layer upon layer upon layer. So how do we feel about these pictures and diagrams? These ones do a good job? Do they need some tweaking?
Well, I think they're pretty good. I think that we should supplement this with a picture or two of the houses that we all have seen and that we think are just unnecessarily complex.
One across from La Playa, the Italian one, across from La Playa, everybody knows that house.
With the round window?
The brick
Yes,
one?
with the brick around the top and
Oh, yeah, that
yeah,
place is
all the detail.
ghastly.
I'm glad you say that, Carolyn. I will tell you an anecdote that when this group first joined, we had a little walkabout and we were in front of that building and we were all saying, oh my God, this is an X. And there was a young couple from out of town taking a photo,
Thought it was
and we
wonderful.
said, they said, why are you, what is interesting to you about this? They said, this is such a great building. It is so Carmel. These visitors. It was very funny. We're like, oh my God, you're clearly from out of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then there's your favorite on Santa Lucia, which may or may not be in town.
Yeah. Do you know that
Which
one
one?
that's
It's
like
the new,
has
more
a
modern one.
marble, glossy
Oh, that
marble?
ghastly
Is that in
thing?
town?
With the
We don't think it's in town.
shades over the shutters.
It's on
May or
the
may
far
not be.
side of
over the
Santa
windows.
Lucia.
They have little.
It
can-
has,
East or west?
it would be not
South.
It's on the south side.
South side, but on the east or west end of
It- It's on,
it's toward
Middle.
the east to middle.
well, you cannot miss it, Brandon.
It's west
I mean,
of,
it's just.
Glossy wood, little
Polished.
Oh, yeah.
weird
I don't-
awnings.
I don't think
of
that's the city.
marble.
I think the line, that's city, and then if you follow that down, then our city bumps in.
It could never
Past
have
that.
come through. I will tell you, as discouraged as we sometimes are, that could never have made it through this group,
Yeah,
this
So was-
city
I'm sorry,
hall. I
was
don't
that
think
in- That was
so.
the question, was it in the city?
it's not in the city. That's a county house. Yeah,
I think we should use that.
that's right.
Why it was approved.
Yeah.
So sticking with the images, on this.
Thanks, Nancy. I appreciate the backup on that.
The bottom diagram is fine, but I think that point is made in the diagram above that has a check mark. So I don't know that you need both.
I agree.
Yeah,
The
okay.
bottom one isn't as good a
Mhm.
description, because I like the comparison of the two above it.
I agree.
And you can do the same call out if appropriate, because it really does, it has the same effect.
Yeah.
So we use the space with images instead of that one.
Yeah, a little redundant. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Looks like we don't have any.
This whole thing just needs pluses and
Yeah,
X's
pluses
and
and-
X's and checks.
Yeah, we don't have, when we talk about garages a little bit in here, we don't have any pictures of garages, so it'd be nice to get some good garage examples. 5.1.7.
All the 5.1s.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We have some bad examples of this one.
Yeah.
The one that has that black garage.
All right. 5.2. Ensure that a building appears to be no more than 2 stories in height as viewed from the public right-of-way. I think that's a very good X.
Push the picture up a little bit so that you've got room for a couple more pictures down here.
Oh, this is not the.
Oh yeah, don't get married or worried about any of the formatting you see in this. This is, yep, just content at this point. I mean, this,
This isn't the Carmel house down below, is it?
which one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on scenic.
Mhm.
It's on scenic.
So I mean, 5.2 that whole section seems pretty straightforward. Does anybody see any more need than just having
2.0.
the whole 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3? I mean, these are all about.
But you're saying they're easy to illustrate.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get another picture of, that's in Carmel?
Is this not Carmel here?
No, that's on point.
It is.
Where is it? I've seen a house almost exactly like this on the point. Where is it, guys?
No, that one's on the point, yeah,
This one's on the point,
yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah. Well, so I'm,
Oh,
Eric says I'm correct. This is on the point.
you're correct. I could be mistaken, but I think you're correct.
I'm
No.
pretty sure
There's
that-
plenty in Carmel that look like that too.
But let's get a couple more pictures.
But I think maybe, I do have some photos of ones that are, because of the nature of the site and the topography, they step up. So you have the lower forms, you maybe see them, but you can just, from the street, but you can distinctly see that they're in different planes as you step back on the site, so they do not appear to be the three-story, even
And
though
that's-
there's 3 levels
Yeah, that
to
would
the
be
building.
great, to show how you can do that
Yeah.
and still have it
Yeah.
appropriate for what we want.
There's also there's examples where it's split left to right too. So Eric's talking about split front to back. There's ones where the 2 and 3 story is split left to right too. We've got 2 stories on the left, and as the topography goes up this way, then your 2 stories are over here. You could actually count 3 levels,
Right,
but they're split.
right.
Um,
Which is what we encourage, actually.
yeah, exactly.
Stepping
Yeah.
over the hill.
Yeah, we can get. I know I can think of a couple.
Yeah, a lot of it just has to do with the grade and being sensitive to that.
Okay. 5.3, convey human scale in a building's basic forms. We've got a good handful here. We've got one picture with the green check mark next to it of a 1-story house that appears to be illustrating maybe 5.3.3, emphasize low and horizontal, so the buildings appear to hug the ground.
I think, I don't think that picture is a best use,
I agree.
best look.
What does everybody else think? I think we could maybe do a little better than that picture for,
The one on Scenic?
yeah, I think we do a little better for low and horizontal, hugging the ground. Even if it's the same house, I think we can do a better picture.
Frank Lloyd Wright is a perfect example of that. Well, for where it is. I don't agree with that statement for a lot of the other houses in town, but low and horizontal, I don't think we want to stress. That sounds like ranch style to me.
You just don't have the space for it.
Right, exactly. It's really a moot point.
Well, this is a holdover from 20 years ago, and I believe that Nori may have even addressed this, because we've raised this before, like, how does this relate to how we've now reformed the roof permissions, for example? And, no, well, I was just gonna say, I think he actually spoke on this, Brandon, if I recall right, and said, this is what people were concerned about 25 years ago, and that's why it's in here.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, we have been a little bit aggressive on tightening up language and stuff. We have made some forays into new thoughts, but if we eliminate this, that would be a new thought. Like, for example, the volumetrics thing, that's kind of new, it's a new experiment. I don't see personally how we can support this now. There must have been something going on.
Well, the other
Then-
contradiction
Yeah.
as you design something is that if you want it to be spread out all in one level, then you're taking up site. And the way the Carmel ordinances are written, you have a distinct separation between site coverage and floor area.
Mhm.
So what it really implies is that you're not penalized for going up. And that's probably not a bad idea, because by going up to the second floor, maybe you create more open space.
Absolutely, and more planting, more
And so,
trees,
and
more
so
everything.
that flexibility is kind of written into the code, and I think is effective, right? So the whole idea of creating, like Carol says, like ranch-style homes in every lot, at 40 by 100, you just don't
It's
have
not
the
gonna
space.
happen.
So we'll drop a pin on that one.
Yeah.
On that policy itself. Yeah. Yep.
Look at the language.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Anything else in the 5.3s that's jumping out at us here?
Well, this notation from an earlier meeting of show an outline of roof proportions, this is from 5.3.5, proportion roof forms to the scale of the building. I mean, I can imagine a diagram that would show a really horrifying roof on top of a different type of little building or something, and maybe that was what was called for when we took this note, but I don't know, do folks think that's still relevant? Because what we have in the following page is a series of diagrams that show similar concepts, out of proportion fenestration, out of proportion entryways. This was a call in an earlier meeting for an out of proportion roof, basically, like that needs to be shown. So what do folks think about that? Is that an issue? Is that something we do need to get someone to diagram?
So do they exist?
I think they probably do if we have this note here. Let's just try to find a picture and see if we can't find a picture, then they don't exist. Yeah.
So instead of a diagram, we would just try to photograph it, okay?
Okay.
What about 533, just a moment? What if we just change the language and said emphasize buildings that appear to hug the ground and take out the low and horizontal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely, so we've been, Doug, along the way, we've been dropping these little pins in here for these policy ones to come back and talk about, but I think that could be one of the solutions, so write that down.
I think hugging the ground, that was kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Well, it means that even if you have a vertical two-story building, for example, you don't have huge floor plates. I mean, I think, or high floor plates. I think
Yeah.
that could still apply to a taller building in a way.
We're gonna go back to this anyway. right?
Yeah, we're gonna come back, yep. Okay, so,
Roofs don't hug the ground.
um, I'm moving forward. 5.4.0, use building details to provide interest, but not to exaggerate the scale of a building. These is another one where I think we can get a lot of really good pictures.
It'd be nice to have some good, nice, modest entries and modest windows, and I actually think it would be wonderful to illustrate the final two, this 5.4.4 and 0.5, but mostly I guess it's mostly 0.4, that it is hard to understand for folks, I think. I would like to have an enormous view of the ocean, but I also want a mission-style house. Well, you can't have both, because a mission-style house could never have been constructed with expansive pieces of glass. If you want expansive pieces of glass, you gotta pick something else. And so I think we should illustrate that one really clearly. That is very hard for folks to understand. I've seen it so many times over the years. So maybe an X and a check for mission style in particular, and the limitations of that technology.
Yeah, so have like two mission-style houses next to each other.
One with
One with the correct
Yeah.
style of window and one with the incorrect style.
Yes, I think that would help.
Or you just show front as a negative, just show the front and the back. Normally, they're like, the real missions on the front and the back, they look like all
Spectrum.
doors or something.
Yeah. And there, of course, you're using advanced technology to get huge spans that you cannot get with mission-style buildings. So that's one of specific, like that's gonna be doing a lot of work, that photo.
What else we have here? Appropriately sized, never oversized building elements such as windows, doors. I think that's easy to get photos of modesty and not modesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This
5,
is where it gets dangerous, where you need to maybe look outside the city.
yeah, yeah, there's
Just focus on the door.
5.5.
Real quick though, what about the thing that's out of, use materials at traditional scales, dimensions, and modules? Does anyone have any examples? I mean, that's easy to illustrate in the plus, because most materials are coming in traditional, you can even just buy a brick, you know, they're pretty much brick sized. But I don't know if folks have noticed examples, this must be in there for a reason, that folks have this is
I
for
definitely have a photo of-
5.4.2.
There's this tendency to use what's common, sometimes used in inside, where you have these tiny little stones that are put together and stuck on, glued onto fireplaces or whatever.
Oh,
And
yes, yes.
there's some people that have stuck that on the outside of houses,
Yeah.
where the scale is completely inappropriate.
Okay, so the
To
teeny
the
stone
material.
example could be an X.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Or
like,
for example, like having cornices or corbels that are really out of scale. Is that in this purview?
yes, do you have that?
I can find it, certainly, yeah.
Okay,
Definitely.
okay, good,
Great.
all right, perfect.
Okay, 5.5.0, keep the overall color scheme muted to blend with the forest palette. Limit the use of bright colors. Go take a picture of the purple house.
On mission, there's one on mission that's all
Yeah.
different colors for
Yeah.
sure.
Marge Adams' house.
Yeah, near 13th. It's been like that forever.
I mean, it really is, don't you think?
Yes.
I don't know Marge.
Oh, God.
We shouldn't offend Marge, probably.
Oh, she's not alive.
Oh, good.
She's an older.
Offend away
population,
then,
she's a real
offend away.
character. Real character.
Here I would stick to just pluses,
Yeah.
checks, because otherwise you have to photograph the entire house, right? And then we're gonna.
Well, so this, I will say that at the planning commission level and at staff level, this avoids starkly contrasting color schemes. This has been a pretty hot one lately, so I think having a couple showing bad, like the high contrast, that'll be easy to do.
Well, I'm so sick of white and black.
And black are the contrasting, but
Yeah,
off-white at least needs to be allowed.
Yeah.
Mission style, in the commercial
Clean
district.
or off-white, yeah.
Well, then I'm gonna suggest that maybe we have to show a white and an off-white.
Probably lives
We have to show, if we're gonna allow things that are as bright and stark as off-white, then we need to show where the line
guys,
is.
hold on,
Yes.
let's just listen to one person at a time here.
I mean, I don't know if everyone agrees with that, but if we're entertaining white, because even though I would consider all white to be stark, but I personally am not as burned up about this as the rest of the town, so I'm just gonna put my opinion aside. But if we're going to say white is okay in certain shades, that's been the consensus, then I think we need to show a contrast of this is too white and this is okay. This is a white that's soft or whatever, and we will have to show that. Otherwise, it is not understandable that we're
Well, this
okay.
isn't bad, too. This whole, it's like an
That's one of the reasons I'm not
architectural,
worried about it.
you know, architectural digest. That this year, we should be doing this, you know? It's like, it's a fad thing.
It's more than 100 years old, actually.
Well, right.
It's
But-
colonial.
Corbusier
Well,
and
but
colonial
But that's fitting. Having some of these places,
Maybe
you know
it's
what I'm
just too
saying?
much.
It's not fitting
I-
for
I-
the house or the neighborhood.
The only good news
It's
is they
attention
painted
getting.
over.
Well, that's,
all it is.
again, why I am not as worked up about it as everybody else. It is paint.
I will say the conversations have been more about contrast versus color. So I think that that's really what the conversation is. Are we looking at highly contrasting paint schemes, or are we looking at more muted, whether it's white and black, dark green and white, or, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Eric.
So then let's do this. Let's be really specific. This, again, is gonna be changing a decade from now, I'm sure. But let's be really specific and show two whites, and let's show two contrasts. One that's low contrast, one that's high contrast. And then I think we should show general check marks about beautiful earthen palettes
Yes.
where they're totally hidden in the forest, and I think we have some
Yeah.
lovely examples of that. So home in on the whites and the low and high contrast, and then some beautiful other shots of great colors. Okay.
Love it.
Now we're on
6.0.
6.
6.0.
Almost there, we're doing well.
Home stretch.
Kind of.
Detail every property authentically and consistently.
Haven't we said this already?
Yep, this shows up in our commercial guidelines as well. So we have, we have gone through a lot of this already. So we'll have the big header picture. This, I think we've all continued to agree that these header, the big 6.0.0, that's where we have our superstar pictures, kind of like highlight the bigger theme of the section. So we'll look for some of those.
And we aren't there yet, sorry.
It's okay. 6.1.0, use building materials and features in a manner that conveys authenticity, which is a word that we've used a lot in this, and it's very important. So we've got quite a few under this, 6.1.1 through 1.9. We got a couple pictures here on the right-hand side, thin stone veneer that you can tell is just applied. And that's got a,
Commercial district, it looks like.
yep, I think it might be. But good example. Do we want to try to find a residential representation of that? Okay. Mm-hmm. So find a residential picture of that, and then we've,
See, one quickie, this one is in the commercial district.
Right.
Yeah. on
We're gonna
St.
replace it
Carlos.
with residential.
Yes, but I didn't get the feeling that we were encouraging this kind of thing downtown.
we're not.
We're not, it's got an X on the downtown.
Okay, good, because I just heard, and I thought, this isn't what we did before, so.
No,
okay,
it's
now-
a
Now
no.
I'm clear.
It's a no in the commercial too.
No anywhere.
Take it somewhere else. We don't want it. And then we have another diagram here. If you flip forward a little bit, 6.1.6, the sketch that is meant to show stone-looking structural. You know, that's the traditional construction is the stone's on the bottom, it's heavy, it provides structure. This seems like a really good diagram that you can show a whole house, and it wraps all the way around, which is another guideline that we talk about. And then the one directly below that is a stone cladding, 6.1.7.
Are we trying to discourage, like, wainscoting kind of?
So we're not trying to discourage it when it's done. What this image is meant to show, the question was, are we trying to discourage this? What this image is meant to show it being done the right way when it appears to be structural. So see how it wraps around the whole house? That would have been a traditional construction method for building the foundation of the house out of stone and then going on top of that with wood. If it was just the front and it only wrapped around halfway around the side, that would clearly not be structural.
Or if it was wood below and
Right.
stone above, which we do see some
Yeah,
places.
heavy at the bottom, light on top.
Thank you for the raised foundation, right?
Right, it's a
It's a raised foundation.
Exactly.
It makes a huge difference.
So what else do we see in the 6.1 section that might need a diagram?
I think we should
Or a
diagram
photo.
a true divider versus a true divided light versus a false light. I think folks need to just emphasize that. This is 6.1.4.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, real
Some people
divided
don't
lines.
get that.
I think we should do the same with the 6.1.2 with the shutters, like make clear like what a real shutter looks like versus a little dinky,
Yeah,
Home
that
Depot
never
shutter.
used, yeah,
yeah.
functionally.
And I would submit we should put the dumb sunset center window, stucco window fake thing, just,
Yours and Catherine's favorite. Catherine
like
loves
that one,
thing too.
Catherine?
It's her favorite.
'Cause
The
that-
fake window on Sunset Center. She, yeah, yeah.
It's up in the sort of the.
It's like cast in relief.
On the facade,
Yeah.
and it's just like, what is that?
It's just tacked on.
Mhm.
And shutters, if we could even get some that fold, you know, because it's sometimes hard to have a shutter that would completely fit over the window, but they can be folded.
Like
so that-
bifold.
Yeah,
Mhm.
bifold, to give the people an idea,
Which-
that's why it's possible to do that.
Which is done traditionally,
Mhm.
you see that
Yeah.
here.
And you can usually tell because they stick off the house a little bit more. They're a little thicker, yeah. All right, these are good. What else? And the 6.1s, do we see needs some representation?
I think it would be nice
Faux
to
finishes.
show, I think actually it would be very important to show maybe a couple X's of incorrectly stacked stone. I think a lot of folks do not understand how to make, because we're not requiring folks to build a stone building. But if we're requiring folks to have their stone look like it is a stone building, then you have to see the weight transferring from each layer to the layer below. And when something is in the wrong proportion or looks wallpapery, sometimes it's a very subtle difference between something that looks stacked and something that looks like it couldn't be stacked.
Yeah.
So I think we should show a properly stacked, which we obviously
This
have
is a
lots
good
of
one,
good
yeah.
examples of, and then maybe 2 or 3 near misses where it's not stacked. It could never be stacked, but it kind of looks close. And in that way, maybe we hone the commissioner's eyes a little bit to really being careful and really making folks show in their application how they're going to apply that stone.
Well, isn't this one a problem then?
No, that's
No, this is stacked,
that's well done.
this is stacked correctly.
Okay.
This
I
could,
thought you meant thicker at the bottom or something.
well, it has to do with bearing surface, and this is really about stone masonry, you know, like, I have some stone walls on my property, sometimes there's a small stone on the bottom, sometimes there's a small stone on the top, and vice versa. It has to do with whether the loads are looking like they're transferred properly. So it's not easy to, it can be hard for folks to discern, but it is clear if we have some good examples, I think.
So a good example, well, a really good example is, I'm going to show you up above what Victoria's talking about. So look at the X up above of the veneer. You see how there's grout lines with multiple stones that go straight down. So on the top, for example, you've got a big stone on the left, and then to the right of that, you got 3 small stones with a vertical grout line that goes along 3 of them all in the same line. That's not structurally sound, because they're not. And if you look at the one below, almost all of them, there's an edge on top of a full stone. So the edges should be carried by the stone below them. That's a big part of the structural load bearing of the stone.
Yeah, the
I have a
stagger.
question for you about how you monitor this, because like if you present something, the type of stone you're going to use, you're not really inspecting to make sure that it's stacked, applied in a way that looks appropriate, right? I mean, that's not really.
Absolutely.
Well, it's in the application, but I think what David's asking is when we go, because we do building inspections, right, to make sure things are built safely and per code. We also go and do planning final inspections too, to make sure the materials that we were told were going to be used were done. And if it was totally egregious, like it was a different stone, and if that was something that was important to the design, we could make them tear it out or redo it. Yeah, we do that. We do at least 2 planning inspections for every project. Sometimes more. We do what we call planning rough, when it's rough framing and we're making sure where stuff's be going. Then we do a planning final for those specific details.
6.1.8 is also a place, and this is really dense, I think this needs several illustrations, 6.1.8. So the one I said before with a good example of stacked stone, and then a handful or 2 or 3 that are like near misses. The other 2 things that I think need to be illustrated here as X's are framing just around windows and doors, clustering stones around accents, having them poke out. I think a lot of folks just need to know, even if you see that in a couple of the buildings that exist here, it's not something that we ever want to encourage.
Like the floating stones.
Yeah, and that these little coins on the corners, and
Oh, yeah.
so
Exactly.
I think we should show those X's. Okay,
There's a-
sorry,
there's a-
go ahead.
No, there's a great example, out on the point of that. I mean, just, here, we're gonna put a stone here, and here, and here, and here, and it's like,
Can you
oh my
photo
God.
that and send it in?
I don't know how to.
You don't know how?
No,
Just take a photo and we'll help you with the tech.
Yeah, say where it is, yeah.
Just take it,
okay.
that's all. We'll help you
Doesn't have to be a
transfer
good
it.
picture. We just need to know where it is. Okay, anything else in the 6.1s? I think we've got some good suggestions here. I'm gonna press ahead then. We're almost done. 6.2.0, use building materials or features in a consistent manner. So we've got a couple of images here on the right already. Stonewood house with a red check, which I don't know if that's extra good or extra bad, because the check mark means yes and the red means I don't know. Another format. This one seems, I mean, I would posit that this is pretty consistently built.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be.
I think it's meant to be green, so we'll call that a green one.
It just matches the door.
That's all.
We've got some more down below. Use design detail and surface materials throughout the full exterior of the building. Do not apply special materials. So you can look at the one below that where it's all stone. It's got the nice roof. That picture is a pretty good picture, I would think. It's even framed in nicely by the trees.
Very
Yes.
pretty.
The one above it, I think, it's kind of a grainy picture. If we like that place, we can do probably a better job with that picture.
You mean the one with the simple door? Is that
The one up, the first one that has the red
Oh, I
check
see,
mark,
yeah.
it's just not a great picture.
That's true, better photo. Well, I think there's lots of examples of 6.2.2 being violated around town, like where wall materials are
Mhm.
stopping and starting. I think we should show that.
Show some cases where it works and where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
And where they put the stone just stuck on the outside of the stucco, it's not behind the stucco. Oh, you already said that, excuse me.
Yeah, same.
Agreed,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, and I also think we've made a slight clarification from prior years with the 6.2.3, where we're trying to simplify the material palette. So we are asking for one primary material, with other things being clearly subordinated. there are probably many examples in town where there are several materials that are not, one of them does not take the lead. I think that would be where, this one?
Actually, I mean, the one on the top is a good example of that. Half of that structure is wood and half of that structure is stone. You can't really tell if this is a wood house or a stone house. I don't know if you could tell me that.
Do you know this property?
I do.
This is primarily a wood
But the picture
property.
though, I know,
No,
but
you're right.
the
So
picture, with the
doesn't
picture
capture
shows,
it.
yeah,
So maybe
exactly.
we need to show this
Mm-hmm.
differently, so it doesn't, so show more of the property.
I do want to just point out, like, for example, the house that we live in, that we didn't design, but it's beautiful, has a stucco and wood portion of it, and it has a stone portion of it too. It's not really clear. I mean, because of the wall, I would say it's predominantly a stone house, but without the wall, it might be kind of half and half. But if it was just 51% stone, is that, I mean, like, predominantly, are we really leaving it really open to interpretation?
Well, this says clearly subordinated, so maybe yours is not so clearly subordinated, but you're grandfathered in.
No, I want houses like mine to be built, though. I think it's beautiful, and I'd like other people to be inspired
What's
by it.
beautiful about it is how close it is to not being a primary material.
Well, I think in this architectural style that they're working on, they're trying to emulate the building and growing over time. You know, so it may have started out as a small rock hovel, and over time it built out. To kind of give it a sense of time and scale and place and everything, it just kind of gives it more character. But in general, I agree, predominant material. So maybe that's just up for the planning commissioners or the planning department to say, well, this is predominant or whatever.
This is here to stop the egregious ones.
The identity crisis
And
houses.
so if someone does
Yeah.
that very well, then the planning commission can make an exception and say, oh, this looks like something that evolved over time. It's not a problem that there's not a primary whatever. But this is because we have seen this rampant hodgepodgey thing.
Remodels, major remodels could introduce
Yes.
this in a bad way or a good way.
Yeah. So I would say, though, for 6.2.3, we do need illustrations of the egregious ones, where it's just like a patchwork of different materials that were meant to look like what David is saying, but failed to do that, right? Like, oh, this is supposed to look like a wholly different part of the house, but oh, no, it just looks like a transfer of materials. I think we should find some X's of that, and that's are fairly rampant around America, not just here.
The one thing is that in Europe where you see that all the time, it's different because you're looking, you don't have 40 by 80 lots, and generally the whole edifice is a large scale edifice, and it is, even though the architectural style might be of a new century or a different century, it works because of the scale
There's enough space.
and the open space around it. My God, we don't have any open space, you know? And people try to put monumental, like towers and things like that on property that just can't hold that. It's just phony.
Yeah, nobody's gonna believe that there were 5 episodes, 5 eras for a
exactly.
40 by 100 lot, and this was revisited every century for
Yeah.
5 centuries. So I think that is the mistake that folks make, and I hope this helps get to that.
Rectify it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's that's really good. We got that. So our last one, 6.3, make architectural details integral elements, make the integral elements of the overall building design concept. So this is 3.1 through 0.13, so there's quite a lot here.
I'd love to show a cruddy garage door. There are many of them.
Oh, yeah.
Like just to, again, put an exclamation point on it, no
Is that one
plastic.
specifically on
That's
here?
6.3.3, rather than a standard overhead product. So I'd like to show some beautiful doors, or at least 1 or 2 beautiful doors, and one cheapo Home Depot door that we're trying to, eliminate.
I don't like the bottom picture. First of all, it does have mullioned windows below, but you can't see them, and I don't think that's a good picture of
I just
think
don't
that's a
like
good example of anything.
That, I think, was to be for 6.3.2, that the primary entrance is just completely subordinate, and not subordinate, but it's modest. But yeah, there's probably better
I think they're
So
better
replace
examples.
this.
Yeah, replace this thing.
So
Yeah,
that's
I never liked it
6.3.2. What about skylights? I mean, there are some beautiful examples of skylit ridges that are integrated into some of the more kind of Big Sur type. We could, I don't know if those are photographable or, but.
I don't know if we want to encourage skylights, you know what I mean?
You're right.
No, I don't think we
It could be an X, it could be a.
unless they are absolutely not visible.
Right.
If they're not visible, then that's okay. But, you know,
Maybe we don't need anything
these-
for
No,
that.
I don't
You
think
know.
so. I think, if anything, what we've had success with in the past is the diagram showing where
Yeah.
they can go visible to the street, like because the roof pitches that face the street, it's easy to show, you know, all of those, like with arrows going out. So I think we can illustrate that better than doing a picture.
and it just seems that people think they need a skylight, you know?
Oh, it's dark.
And they're not particularly sensitive to people on either side of them or people on the right of way. They're not utility, they're
If
not.
we're trying to be a dark city or whatever
Yeah,
you call it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have this, we did expand
Mhm.
this, I remember now, 6.3.4, and we have links here.
Mhm.
This is going to go to some regulatory language, right,
Mhm.
for how
To the
far
zoning
back it
code, yeah.
goes? So, and I
And
think.
our zoning code currently has those diagrams I'm talking about in it already. Yeah, and we do, I think, a really good job these days of skylights. I think there was a point in time where we didn't regulate skylights, but those are persona non grata at the planning commission and with my staff these days. Like, we're pretty hardcore about those. And any that are approved, even when they're back on the site, they're required, one of the conditions is to install automatic shades in them so that at night they roll them down. And that's part of that final planning inspection that we talk about. We go make sure that they're on there.
If I recall, this group decided to take out the diagrams of this in an earlier, a way earlier meeting because we thought this language was stronger, that it was going to link to the regulations, and that we decided we wanted to save our gunpowder for other illustrations. But I don't really care, I'm just remembering that for people.
I think you're right. I kind of recall that too.
Yeah.
So the second from the bottom image. What, on 19, so, what is that trying to do positive reinforcement on?
I think that's the 6.3.1 window proportions and sizes that are accurate for a architectural style of building and traditional historic with smaller openings. These are fairly small openings, all of them. I think that's what it is. Maybe there's a better example. What do you think?
Oh, no, I just was unclear what it was trying to call out.
Well, yeah.
Because it does look like a real massive house, so from this angle. So I was just, it's like, okay, what is it trying to do?
I think it also. I think it also could. I mean, we may have pegged that one with 6.2, but I'm not sure that's the right one for it. It could also represent 6.2.4, going back a section where window and door styles and finishes uniform throughout a design.
Yeah, that would work.
So it's kind of a multi-purpose picture, I think.
Well, is it better for 6.2.4? Or maybe we need another illustration
it's
for
a-
small
Yeah.
little openings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to point out 6.2.4 is inconsistent with the very top picture too. Those windows are different.
Way different.
And I don't really agree with making all window and door styles and finishes uniform throughout a design. I think that there are times when it looks better not to do that, so.
I think this is, I'm sorry, I think that this, if you're talking about the garage, these are wood frame divided light windows. One of them has an arch and one of them doesn't. But
And
that,
one has smaller panes,
That's okay.
but that is,
that's okay?
yeah, that's not, it's not meant to say that you can't do, this is just about the styles, materials, and finishes.
Okay.
Not the proportions,
Oh, all
not,
right.
nothing. I mean, of course, a bathroom would have a small opening and a living room would have a large opening. I think this is really just about specifying the same, language, right? If it's a wood window, you don't have a wood window next to a metal window. You don't have a, louvered, you know, all louvers everywhere, but one of them's a plate. You know, this is about, yeah,
They're integrated, it's
Yeah.
all integrated.
yeah.
Okay.
I hope that's not misleading. I think
No, I think
it's
that's good.
I think it's okay.
So I kind of jumped us back there. So we're still in the 6.3s, our last section here. We talked about garage doors, getting some pictures of that, diagrams for skylights if needed, maybe. How about later on in that section, 3.5 and forward? We've got balconies, chimneys, roof materials, fences, garden walls, arbors.
So here's Mary Ann's point again, we might wanna put a pin in 6.3.9. We as a group have always thought we should integrate the garden wall into the building architecture. This is restated here, but there's possibly some room for, you know, maybe if it's closer to the street, it should always be Carmel stone or whatever, so I think we have to come back to that.
That's hard.
I think we need a discussion next meeting on walls.
Yeah.
Front property line walls. Do we need them at all except for topographic purposes? They're contrary to having an open airy landscape front yard.
And whatever that diagram, I don't remember what the diagram ended up with, like, is the, how,
If
can you
it's
even have
solid,
a
it's a
wall?
foot.
It's a foot tall if
Yeah,
it's
if
solid.
it's solid.
Yeah.
So it's just a curb
that
now.
automatically gives a variance along the streetscape. I do have something about 6.3.12. To me, it reads that we need to make all the wall and the pillars and the gate all the same height,
Yeah.
and that doesn't work.
Never use gates, posts, or windows that are monumental or out of scale.
The last sentence, keep posts and columns the same height as their adjacent fence or wall.
Yeah.
But
I'm
how,
not quite
what would
sure
it look like
why
if you
that
don't
is.
do that? I mean, if you had like a post that's a foot taller than the wall or fence next to it, that's not very, that's not really shown anywhere.
It's not appropriate.
What? I'm confused.
So if you have a stone wall coming along and then you have a monumental post that's like, say, a foot taller, is that what you're advocating for? Cause this,
No, I'm just wanting it to not all be flat. Because right now, it's all the same height. Keep posts and columns the same height as their adjacent fence or wall. And that's not,
It would be too massive?
no, it would just look just flat, you know, I mean, posts and columns were created so that there could be something substantial and hard and heavy enough to hold the gate up. And so that's a part of why we have stone posts on wood gates throughout Europe, you know, and the States, throughout the ages, because it's functionally necessary. So I don't see why we should like exclude them entirely. I agree, we shouldn't make them grandiose, and maybe mine are a little too big. Yeah, but I'm just saying, I've looked back at ours, and ours are like really quite high with the bowls on top and the plants. It's quite high. I don't think that's necessary, but just not having them all the same height. So, you know, I think in proportion.
Yeah, we're talking proportional, maybe 3 or 4 inches above.
Yeah.
So I think we should put a pin in that one too, come back and just focus on that last sentence. Are we talking like, you know, similar in height maybe? We'll come back to that one.
6.3.8, the committee previously talked about horizontal elements, the fences, that we didn't encourage those.
yeah, I don't think we ended up not taking a stand. If I recall, we ended up not deciding whether we were gonna dictate. So if I, again, recall what was said, Mary Ann, like she said today, has been advocating, I would argue, all year for a consistent type of fence and now today a consistent type of wall for anything that's in that landscape zone, which would mean the traditional picket thing. But this group has never fully agreed with that I recall. I think therefore we've stayed away from.
Yeah, and the conversation, I remember this conversation too. It came to, let the rest of the guidelines guide what's appropriate from the fence. Is it consistent with the character of the architecture of the house and the surrounding neighborhood versus coming straight out and saying no horizontal boards?
And I think we ought to have a photograph of Tesher's house there's all sorts of different elements on the house, and there's horizontal fencing at the property line.
Don't worry, I'm gonna take one on the way out. It's hard to eat an apple and do
I
this
know,
at the
it's very
same time.
crunchy and loud.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so what you're saying, have a photo that shows the different, because the fence is,
The fence is wood, horizontal wood. The house is stucco, I think there's stone on it. I mean, the fence doesn't match the house at all.
Yeah, I think that's not, yeah, good.
That's bad,
Right.
yes. Do not go there.
so you're saying that would be in violation of 6.3.9, which is about integrating the materials from the house out
That's
to the landscape stuff, yeah.
And talk about lack of diversity for those who talk that word, you know, there's no diversity in having the same fencing all along a street.
Right. And it's a double lot, which makes it even worse.
Okay.
What else? Any of the other 6.3s?
I would say the chimney diagram is great, and I wouldn't try to photograph it because it's too hard.
Yep.
And this is really good.
My house violates that too.
What?
You have a floating chimney?
We just need to take all kinds of pictures in your
It
house.
was the thing, I mean, people did it. I don't know why, but they did.
I bought it that way, yeah.
All right, any other 6.3s, or are we wrapping up?
Wrapping up.
Is there anything important I missed?
It was the most important part of the entire 3.5 hours that we've been here.
Leave you guys.
We talked about banning trees in the front.
That's right. Yeah.
Ouch.
Except for lollipop trees, we're gonna be okay with those. Yeah, so, and that's actually we already codified that, that's done, can't change it.
I swear off boxwood and lollipops.
Okay, we're gonna give Melanie fits here. All right, okay.
All right.
Do you wanna adjourn us?
Let's adjourn us, unless folks have anything else to say about future items now that we've been through this. I think we handled it okay
we got
at
it.
the
I'll-
beginning.
Yeah.
I know, good work, everybody. Please take an apple or two, or however many you can carry. Bring them. Yeah, they're from my tree, yeah.
They actually are golden delicious that I pick before they get too gold because they taste totally different and to be better. Yeah, because when they get really yellow, then they start to get soft. They're a little too sweet. So nobody, for years I couldn't figure out what breed we had in the yard because I thought, oh, these don't look like anything I know. They're shaped like a delicious, but they're not